So thank you, Andy and Noureen, for talking with me. Where and when were each of you born?
Good.
I was born in Jordan, 1982.
What day? Tell her what day.
November 6th. Lived all my life in Jordan, and I came here 6 years ago.
So that makes you a Scorpio, November 6th, you said?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And do you identify at all with this Scorpio intensity and deep feelings?
Somehow. I love to read about it. I love to know it sometimes. Yeah, it's interesting.
I was born on November 8th, 1981, a year and 2 days before Noureen was born.
Oh, so you're both Scorpios. That you must have an intense connection.
Yeah. Yeah. That's pretty much when you said feelings and intensity. Yeah, that's right there, man. That's exactly what it is.
So this birthday, our birthday on the 7th, in between. Yeah. So we don't have two birthdays and 2 different days, so we celebrate and a day in the middle.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. So Noureen, when you came to California 6 years ago, what culture shock did you experience? I'm thinking maybe small families, isolation. I don't know. What did you see?
So the thing, I didn't come to California 6 years ago. We lived in Pennsylvania for 4 years, and that's totally different than California. I felt a lot of, I had to learn everything. I didn't even know how to go to speak with my children teacher or set a doctor appointment because insurance works completely different here. So I didn't have my license here, so I had to wait a whole year before I start driving. Much dependent on Andy to do everything and help me with everything. Like the best I could do, just walk to the stores, maybe get some groceries, and walk to the school, pick up the kids, and I worked right away. I was a dorm parent at a boarding school. And I feel that helped me a lot with my English, get more comfortable with my English. I spoke English since I was little, but to get comfortable and like not feel like shy. I may say something, might be wrong. People will laugh at me, that type of thing. So yeah, everything was different. Everything, food, people, the way people look at you, the way people. More and more, I learned that was more people wants you to fit a certain image, and if you don't fit it, like the Middle Eastern brown girl, I worked in hotels all my life, so for some people, I think they interrupt that as I didn't speak perfect English or good English. We're not perfect. Good English means that she like poor little girl, and I was never poor little girl. I was just didn't know how to express myself, and I was always like independent, strong. I learned a lot. I would say I learned a lot. When I came to California, I love California. You see all different kind of people. Like no one look at you and ask you, like right away, where are you from? You have an accent. At least I feel like people in California, especially in LA, because I work in hotels too. When they ask you, oh, you have an accent. Where are you from? Are you Spanish? Are you Mexican? Are you in a nice way, let's say. But maybe in Pennsylvania, I felt more people asking to put me in a category that I don't belong. Yeah.
So excuse me, your kids were born in Jordan?
Yes.
So how old were they when they came here?
Miriam turned 2 here. Our first week in America, she turned 2. Mia turned 4. And Miriam turned 2 here.
Yeah.
And do you speak Arabic to them so they're bilingual?
Well, unfortunately, we lost the language when we lived in Pennsylvania because I felt like, at that time, Trump was just elected, and I felt like it was not a language you want to speak out loud or out in the stores because, I've seen people. Mina was speaking Arabic to me in the store, and I've seen people look at me. And I was scared. I didn't know much. I just hear stories and you see all this how people think of like people coming from the Middle East or Muslims or something like that. So I was scared. I started speaking more English to them, and I feel like they understand, but they don't really speak it. So hopefully we'll work on it.
As somebody, as you know, you can kind of see that when we would start speaking Arabic to each other, that like Noureen was generally uncomfortable to do it in public, and it became you start as a husband, you start to pick up on maybe then okay, maybe it's because I was for a long time I really was they're going to be bilingual, and at a certain point it just became one of those things of we still speak it back and forth, and they actually they do have. They have the accent. So one thing we did do is we did make them pronounce certain words so that they could phonetically be able to pronounce the words later in life because that's what their vocal cords develop. So they have the ability to pronounce the words if they should choose later. And when we went to Jordan about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
When we went to Jordan 2 years ago, we were kind of surprised that they did start to pick it up as they were sitting in rooms with people that only spoke Arabic. You could start to see them try to figure out what everyone was saying. And so we felt a little bit better because we thought, they know they're going to be able to do it easily. So we're kind of hoping that eventually that they'll get back to
and maybe it was me just like maybe I just want to fit in, so I don't want to speak a different language so that would make me more different besides like the way I look, my color, my accent. I just don't want to add to the mix.
But it's so much easier when the brain gets wired young to speak another language. So I hope you'll read to them, bedtime stories in Arabic, and so their brains get wired.
Yeah, we're working on it. We just started.
We buy them Arabic, like they have Arabic storybooks, and we have Yasmina this summer took Arabic lessons.
Oh, good.
And so we're in the process of building it back up to make sure that we can, because we're trying to find ways to get back into that, but it's tough.
Well, life is busy. I mean, there's a lot going on with two jobs and 2 households. Oh, there's a cute one.
Oh, she doesn't know.
Andy, you were in the Peace Corps. That's how you got to the Middle East in the first place?
Yep, that's how I got there.
Where were you, in Jordan or Israel?
No, I was in Jordan first, and I was in the village. And the reason we met was because have you ever heard of an organization called Operation Smile?
Mm-mm.
They're the medical charity that fixes children with cleft
palate.
So, they did the surgeries for Iraqi. It was 2004, so they did the surgeries for the Iraqi kids, but they couldn't do it in Iraq. So they had to bus them to Amman to do it. And so what people don't know about Peace Corps is they actually will farm you out to different organizations because you have the language and the cultural abilities. So we would stay at a hotel with the patients because the surgeries take 2 weeks. And she was at that time front desk, right? Front desk manager. So at the time, she was the front desk manager of the hotel where all this was taking place. And so when we were doing this, we did this about 3 times. It took about 1.5 years to even build up for us to talk. And then by that last time, I finally got the courage.
And he was just learning Arabic, so he would say the funniest things ever. Doesn't make any.
With a farmer accent, right? Like
a villager accent.
Very appealing.
One time, she's like, Andy, your accent is so cute, and I was like, why? She's like, because you sound like a kid from like a village who's in the city for the first time. You know what I mean? So I was trying to sound cool and stuff, but it was bad accent and it was bad, it was just but it endeared me to her, so I can imagine. I'm glad that I sounded.
You made her laugh. So when you first saw her, you thought, "Ooh, she's really attractive," but I shouldn't do cross-cultural personal connection, or what was, how did this gradually connect?
The first time I saw her, it was when I was holding the girl and she was slapping me, right?
Yes.
The first time we ever looked at each other, I would say that, right?
Yeah.
So there was this little kid with this. It's a child with a facial deformity. You know what I mean? So I was playing with all these kids and we were having fun and these little kids were running around me and stuff. I'm a teacher, so I just know how to do these things. And I was picking up this girl, playing with her, and she thought it was the funniest thing in the world to slap me in my face as hard as she could, and then giggle and laugh and laugh and laugh. And then I was like, oh, that's really funny. And then she'd do it again because she knew I wasn't going to, what am I going to do, drop her? So she did it, and then the last time she did it, I looked around I hope somebody is seeing this so they can say stop. And as I turned and looked, she was looking at me going like this, like that. And that was, I think, the first time our eyes locked. But then the time that we came back is when somebody, like, we went back because my friend of mine said that he left some computer speakers at the hotel, and so I went back to the hotel, and she was at the front desk, and I was like, oh, I've lost these computer speakers. Now here's where the stories will diverge to either cute versus accurate, and I'll leave you to which one you think it is. I'll tell you the most accurate.
Okay.
But I will come. Oh, she came from the desk. Oh, I'll help you find it. I'll help you find it. And it took an hour and a half to look for these things, and we looked in like 2 places and had coffee 3 times. So at a certain point, we weren't really looking for these speakers. And then when we came back down, I went back to the front desk, and she went behind the front desk. And if you lived in the Middle East, you know that dating has this kind of protocol. If there is dating, you can do it, but there's a protocol to it. Like, you gotta have an excuse. There's gotta be a reason.
And dating is not out there. It has to be hidden. It's not like I'm gonna go home and tell my brothers, oh, guess what? I have a new boyfriend. No, it's not something you talk about.
Right.
No.
Like maybe you tell your mom, your sister, your friends, but you don't make it public. That's not something you can talk about it openly to the male side of your family or friends.
Because they'd
Right.
want to protect you from the bad guy.
Right. So I came to the front desk, exactly this guy. So I came to the front desk, and I got one of those little business cards they usually keep, in the front, and I got a pen. And you'll love this move. I said, well, I'm sorry we couldn't find the speakers, and I wrote down my phone number, and I said, but if you find them,
Really?
and hang on, I handed it I just kind of held it out. And she was more enthusiastic than would usually happen of grabbing it to make sure that she got it. And that's when I kind of knew. And then when I left, she sent a text right away. And it was, to be fair, it was very fresh. She sent a text and said, dear Mr. Andy, we at the hotel, we're very sorry we could not find your speakers. We apologize.
Here's my number.
And here's my number if you need to, right? And then I replied.
Very professional.
Okay, wait. And then my reply was. My reply was, no, my dear, it is completely fine. What's your favorite color?
So that was weird.
And then she responded, purple. And then from that point on, I asked her a series of this or that questions in an effort to kind of just keep the conversation. Like, what was it, shampoo or conditioner?
Ice cream or something.
Ice cream or chocolate, like Pepsi or Coke. And through the next, I would say, about at least month. Every night we were texting back and forth for hours.
Not saying how's your day, what you did today. Okay, so here's another question for you.
Yeah, because the language
mountains or beach, let's say.
Because like your English at the time was working English, and my Arabic was childlike Arabic, so like, it wasn't like we could.
I wasn't comfortable having a full conversation with my English.
But between the two. Like, I'd start a sentence in Arabic and finish it in English, and then if we didn't know a word, like, we'd ask, and then we both looked it up together, and then for that happened, and so we had, like, this text message romance, and I think we got coffee once.
We got coffee once.
We got coffee one time. And then,
in that month.
But it was the end of my Peace Corps service, so quite literally, we had coffee, and then, like, 3 weeks later, I left. And to be and so she hates me for this. I never thought I would ever see her again because the notion of getting married and me converting when I'm 25, like I had this ideological stand about it.
But we didn't have a conversation about we're gonna be together or like I'm gonna wait for you or something like that. It was more like I like you, you like me, but it's like the elephant in the room. We didn't talk about it.
Right.
But we both knew that we like each other, but maybe because he's going back to America, I'm gonna live my life here. It's not gonna work.
So I went to the United States, and I was in, and so this is how you know, like that it's meant. The guy went to the United States, and I was in the States for a year and a half before I ended up getting the job in Israel, and then I moved to Israel, and then it's funny. The first time that you and I talked when we were doing that forum or whatever that was the night, I think one of the first nights that I had come, like, because I had come back to Jordan just to visit, like, see, and I was so smug about it, like, yeah, maybe I'll call her, you know what I mean, like, maybe, I'll see what's going on, like, I found her email, and I emailed her, and I said, can I see you, and she's like, we'll see, and then, I'm sorry, you can speak through, if I get in this wrong, she'll correct me, I promise you, so, like, when I came back, I was kind of, maybe I'll see her, but since I had left, how old were you when I left? 22?
Yeah.
Like you were 22, I was 25. But you know, that's a big couple of years.
There's 1 year between me and you.
So you were
Must be
20.
23, 24.
No, you were 24. I was 25.
Okay.
So 24, 25. But when we came back, we were a little bit more grown up, and she had gone from front desk manager to assistant GM of the hotel. And so she had become. We both matured a lot. And so when I got there, you know, I was kind of like, I'll just see this girl, we'll see how it's going, you know, and stuff like that. And then when we got there, the first thing she said to me is she got me to the match. She's like, what'd you say? You're like, what, email doesn't, oh, big America, email doesn't work? You can't call me this whole time?
Yeah, I just didn't like the idea, or I just wanted to be the girl, I have a girl in town type of thing. Like, I'm not that person. Like, you don't talk to me when you're here, then you leave, then you don't even bother, and you're coming back to work in Israel, and now you want to contact me. So for me, it was more like, welcome back, how can I help you? And literally like this, yeah.
But then I asked if she wanted to get coffee, and she said yes. So we walked to a coffee shop, and halfway there, this is really inappropriate, I did try to kind of hold her hand as we were walking, and she slapped it away, but for some reason that made it worse. I was like, oh my goodness gracious, that's fantastic. But then she still went to get coffee with me, and I'm like, okay. So and
I correct you.
And she corrected, yeah.
Yes.
And I think it was that coffee was what did it, right?
Yes.
With the coffee, when we sat down and we were looking at each other, and we were talking to each other, and I think it was the 2 cups. We were making a joke, you know what I mean? It was like, hey, who knows? Maybe someday we'll get married or something. And I was like, what do you want for your dowry? And she's like, I want 2 baby cows. And I remember thinking, oh, that's so cute. And when we went home,
that was a joke.
It was a joke.
That was so gross, yeah.
Which we find out later when she came to Wisconsin
Yeah,
to visit. My family was happy to show her a dairy farm too.
No, thank you.
Anyway, I mean, this is a long story, but at the same, so then
It's great.
The next couple of days, in the course of the next couple of days, she invited me to her house for lunch, which is the next. I mean, that's a step, right?
Oh, that's big.
To meet her mom.
Yeah,
That's
and her
big.
little
I
brother.
told my mom. My mom knows about him before, but she know there was nothing serious. But when I went back home, I have a really good relationship with my mom.
Mm-hmm.
My mom is very open-minded, clear type of person. I went back home and I told her like, oh, guess who I saw today? So this person, and to go get a coffee with the guy, that's something have to be approved with mom first.
One important element of this story, Gail, is we're both from single moms.
Yeah.
That's a huge part of the story. My mom was widowed, and her parents were divorced at the time, and so we skipped you know, this isn't typical. We kind of we skipped the patriarchal element of.
I was on 5 boys. So for my mom, I'm from a big tribe in Jordan. So for my mom, she was like very, very protective of me because God forbid something happened to me, everybody's gonna be questioning her, especially as a girl. And you know, like Middle East mindset sometimes could be, I mean, always, not sometimes, is way more harsh on the female. Like
Honor.
that means it is her
Honor.
well, you didn't do your job, yeah. So she was very, very careful about, like, I don't think I've ever in my life stayed outside, like, not home. I've never slept outside. Sleepover, that's not something, all my life. And I don't think after 10 p.m. I've ever stayed outside home. My mom always had, like, nope, you're 25, I don't care. It could be 65, you're still going to be home at 10.
After we were married, we went and saw Avatar, and it got out at like 11 o'clock or 11:30, and she leaned over to me, she goes, this is the first time I've ever been out of my house after 10 p.m., and it blew my mind. Like, I was like, stop, wait a minute, what? And I just remember thinking, like, this is different. So we went for lunch, that was nice, I met her little brother, and then a couple days later, she said, come back for lunch, and at this time, this was cooking by now. And so I came back, and so this, and I'm not, you have to tell me, because some people don't believe that this actually happened. So we were sitting there, and after dinner was over, we sat down for coffee, and
My mom liked him. My mom liked him. She said,
why couldn't she?
yeah.
Because
she
you're
said,
not Muslim.
No, she liked me because, what?
Because
No,
you're not
I mean,
Muslim?
at the time, I wasn't Muslim.
No, he wasn't.
But you are now?
I had to convert to get married.
Well, but
So
that
that
would be
was
a reason why she wouldn't like you.
No, my mom
They did.
liked him.
They did like me.
I know.
She liked, and I didn't think religion is not a big thing in my family. Like, my mom never wore hijab in her life until maybe a couple of years ago, only because she didn't want to do her hair more. And my mom is actually half Russian, half Arab. So she had this kind of like different different way she grew up than like other people in the country. So it wasn't like a crazy idea to her that I could be seen an American or something like that. She liked him as a person. She said she liked that he's more like a child. For her, it was like, that's an innocent who will never harm my daughter type of a thing. My mom never liked the like, I'm the man type of a thing. Like, no, I don't want to be with someone like that.
And when I spoke Arabic, I spoke with that, farmer accent, right? That's the colloquial accent. So like they kept like, he's speaking our language. Like, imagine I spoke Georgian Southern English. You know what I mean? They sat there thinking, oh, it's not like they really didn't know what to make of me, to be honest with you. So like, it was confusing for them, but at the same time, I tried to be as genuine as possible. So we're sitting there having coffee, and her mom went in the other room, and we're sitting there having coffee, and in a moment of like, 20-something passion, it just came out, and I looked at her and I said, I would marry you right, huh?
I love
you. No, I love you came before. This was, I'd marry you right now if I could. And right away, she snapped back, like, me too. But that was followed by, and see, here's the thing, it was followed by 45 seconds of silence. And that was the weird, it's like neither one of us said anything afterwards. And it was in that silence that we both kind of realized, I think, that we actually wanted to do this. And then the next thing that came out of, my mouth was like, so,
I guess we're engaged
now. And then she said,
get down on your knee.
And it was off in the other room, and I was like, okay.
And my mom said, like, yeah, right.
Yeah, and then mom came back and sat down, and she's like, and in this wonderful motherly way, she sat down. She's like, all right, explain to me what you think is going to happen, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, I would like to marry your daughter. And she's like, all right. But then we had this, and it's the religion talk. And
my mom was the realistic voice in this, because we were like both like, oh, we're in love, we're gonna go get married tomorrow, and we're gonna live happily ever after. My mom was like, slow down, things doesn't work like that.
Right. So she said immediately, she's like, Andy, this isn't gonna work because remember, you got to remember two things. There's the tribal element of this, and there's the religious.
Yeah.
The religious element really doesn't keep us apart, as long as we both have to be Muslim for this to be religiously okay. And by that point, and to be very honest with you, like by that point, like, and I know this sounds cheesy, she's my religion at this point. So I really didn't care at a certain at this point, and I kept thinking of like, well, if it's, you know what I mean? If like one of us goes to heaven and one of us goes to hell, if we're in the same religion, at least we'll be in the same place together. That really was my logic to the whole thing. And so I said, oh yeah. She's like, Andy, you're going to have to become a Muslim. And my answer to her was, like, right now? Like, I was like, right now? She's like, no, stupid. We're going to go to court. And I was like, and I said, I remember I asked her, I said, like, tomorrow? And she's like, no, you need to sit and think about this, silly.
Yeah,
like,
she kept to think about it first before doing something, because I didn't know his family. I didn't know what to expect. Like, I didn't want the family to be like, she took our kid and she made him Muslim. Even if we agreed on the way we're going to live our life, we're just going to be normal people. We don't really talk about religion in our house. We celebrate Christmas and we celebrate Ramadan. Our kids can be whatever they want. They know that. Like, whatever they choose to be, they will be. But I want him to take his time and think about it, and to talk to his family, see what his mom thinks, because I know his mom is very important to him too. And he was just like, want to do it right the way. It's like, no, it doesn't. It's not that easy.
So my mom came a couple months later to come and say, all right, well, I guess we're going to have to deal with this. So she came, and we had a nice, and it really did start. She approved. She said, okay. Her question, I asked her, like, is it okay if I convert? She's like, convert from what? And I was like, from Christianity, Mom. She's like, well, Andy. She was kind of doing that thing, and then she said something that was really powerful for me. She said, Andy, if you convert, are you going to steal? And I was like, no. And she's like, are you going to lie? I was like, no. She said, well, what do I have a problem? Why do I care? And that made me feel so good about it, so that we decided to actually go down the path. Now, actually getting married was a big deal. because
it was a big story
like,
in the country.
I'm not kidding. We went down to the courthouse, which is in Jordan. Like, there's civil court, which deals with a lot of, but mostly property issues and legal issues.
Tell me first when you went to convert, because it has to be.
That's what I'm saying. So we went to the Sharia court, which is the court you have to go to for all things religious. So things like marriage and conversion and things like this. So we go roll up there like idiots, and this is what we were like. Okay, we're gonna go in. I'm going to convert to Islam, we're going to get married, and we'll be home by lunch. Like, we had lunch waiting on the table for us when we got back.
That's like paper thing, and we'll be done, yeah.
Well, the judge, when we went in front of the judge was very, very, he was nice, but he said, he's like, and I remember
why
saying something.
Why you want to become Muslim? What's the reason? Is it you want to marry a Muslim girl? Because I guess they see that a lot, and they don't want it to become a pattern. So he said no. He wanted him to know more history of Islam. He had to answer questions. Tell me what you know about Islam. It's not like I want to be a Muslim. Like, oh yeah, you're welcome. They didn't agree on him first time.
And I could answer the questions about Islam, but then he was asking me there were history ones, right? But then he was asking me to recite things, and I couldn't. He's like, how do you pray? I had no idea. And
how many times a day you pray? How, like, these things? And he didn't know. I didn't know.
He was really nice about it. Like, he tried to be nice about it. But then when he said no, and then when we left, my friend was trying to explain to me what the judge was telling him, because I had to have a witness, and he was saying, Andy, it's a religion, not a country club. They're not just going to roll like, oh, okay, come on in.
Yeah.
So he said, the judge said, if he can come back and he can recite what's called the Fatiha, which is their testament to faith. He said, if he can come back and recite this, all right, then all right, I'll give him a shot. There you go. And I went home, and I had so many friends that just, because they came over it and they made me memorize it. And I memorized it, and I went back and I recited it for him, and he said, he smiled, and he was like, all right, and they did it.
Wait, so how long did it take before the first time and the second time you went to court?
The first time, it was about 3 or 4 days. It really was. He's like, he's got to come back with something more than just, I want to be a Muslim. It doesn't work that way. He couldn't say, what we found out later is, in Islam, technically he couldn't really say, as long as I do a couple of things, technically he couldn't say no, but he was trying to say, look, it's better for you if you do know these things. And so I had no problem.
I believe for political reasons, they become more and more careful about these things, why people want to become Muslim, where they have no interest in it. If you don't know how times to pray, it's more than 5 times a day, because each one of them have a different number.
And they're different.
The one in the morning, how many times you pray, or how many rak'ah you pray.
There's cycles.
Yeah.
You know?
Like, everybody knows, like, oh, it's 5 times. Like, okay, so how many times in the morning? How many times in the afternoon? Because
I didn't know
it's 4, the afternoon is 4, the evening is 6, and one is 8, and we didn't know.
So then we went to another judge who was supposed to be the one to marry us, and I showed him my certificate like it was some kind of like rewards card or something. We're all in there. And the first one didn't even, he looked at,
he was mad.
He was mad at us. Like, and what we found out there, you explained the tribe part. You have to explain the tribe part.
So, unfortunately, we walked there, and I have to put a cover, because walking to Sharia court, I had to wear something. So we walked in there, asking for the normal thing people wants to do, because it's all right. And the judge looked at me, and he said, and he actually looked at my mom, and he said, you're out of your mind. And my mom was like, what? He said,
and rudely,
rudely. Like
it took them aback. Like, that was when I got concerned, when I was like, they're reacting really weird to this. Like, he said no, but like in a mad way, and we couldn't figure it out.
Of like shame on you type of thing. Like, how do you even think about something like this? You're from this tribe, you're from this big family, and your mom from this big family, and you're coming here to marry an American? He was like yelling at me, and I was like, yeah, and he said, how did you meet? On the internet? On chat rooms? And I'm like, no, it's not like that at all. We know each other.
Mm-hmm. And we would try to explain. He cut us off. Like, he didn't want to hear it.
He said, your time is over. Your time is done. And we literally were kicked out. So my mom got mad, and that was beautiful.
So, but here's the thing.
We need her to get mad.
It really pissed her off. And so that was, at a certain point, it became, oh, well, we're going to watch this, you know?
Like, questioning my choices and my mother way to raise me. Like, how dare you bring an American, and you're from this big family. But I don't care about this big family. I want to be with this person. But love was not in the room or in the discussion for them. It's just like 1 + 1 = 2. That has to be done. Because what if your cousin from like your tribe want to come here and marry you? They will destroy this whole court for me. He was scared.
What we found, so see, this is the thing, is then we went to court number 2, and they did the same thing, a little more polite.
No, we went to get the lawyer.
So we went and got, that's right.
My mom went and
It
got
was
a lawyer.
4 of them, dude.
Yeah.
Right?
So first we got that lawyer. He was very strong and he was kind of religious too. That's religious. So we had to cover. My mom had to cover, and Andy had to explain to him. And we were just honest. Like we were 2 people want to marry, and we're not playing games. It's not a green card type of thing, because that judge sounded like I just want to get off to America and be this bad girl who can do whatever she wants, because that's what he had in his mind. And I was like, no. And my mom said, actually, the only thing my mom asked for to allow us to get married, that we have to live in Jordan for 5 years. She said, you can't marry her and take her away right away. I need to get to know you very well before you just take my daughter and go. I'm not going to allow that.
So I agree.
So when the lawyer heard that, he kind of took our side and he said, I will take care of this. And from there...
So then we went to another court, and they were a little bit nicer, but the judge said, okay, fine, all right, I'll think about it, but where's her father? And remember, father estranged, and by that time he had a stroke, and he wasn't capable
He was not in my life.
He wasn't in her life.
Yeah.
So that judge he had to work around. He's like, all right, well, if you're not going to bring... Sorry, I can't. If the father's not here, there's nothing I can do.
Bring your oldest brother.
Bring your oldest brother. So then we came back with the oldest brother.
No, my oldest brother was not in the country.
Oldest brother wasn't in the country, so
he was working in a different country. He was working with the UN at the time, and there's no way he can come overnight, like come back. He has a schedule. He works. No, it's not gonna work.
So then we brought the younger brother. That wasn't good enough. Then we brought the uncle. That wasn't good. And we could figure out that they were trying. They did not want. Nobody wanted us to do this.
No, they didn't want us to.
Wow.
So then the lawyer was like, let's do one more. So we went to this one more court, and that judge was having a bad day or something, because he did the same thing, but this time he did it to the lawyer. And even the guy who brings the tea started jawing at him, you know what I mean? And the lawyer, I've never seen a brown-skinned man get so red in my life. He was pissed off. And the guy, and I remember he came, they were like, all right, go in there and answer this question. So the judge asked me a question about Islam, and I got 4 words out of my mouth, and the judge said, I don't want to hear it, I don't want to hear it. And then I remember the lawyer's like, this guy doesn't want it. Andy, go, let's go. And so he pulls me out of there, and I remember we were walking in the car, and he's mumbling to himself, like, he's mad.
So mad, yeah.
And they dropped us off at Noureen's house, and she's like, all right, stay by the phone. I'm going to call you.
Yeah.
And so like at 4 or 5 o'clock, he calls, and he's like, get in the car, come to my house, be here by 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
I didn't know this, but I knew something was up when all of a sudden they ran into the other room and put on their pajamas.
To cover and dress well, and my mom too. So I was like, okay, I don't know who we're meeting with, but sure.
Meanwhile, I have no idea what's going on, and my Arabic is about 2nd grade level at this point. So I had this kind of like look on my face all the time of like, I don't know what's going on. So then we go to the lawyer's house, and we walk in this room, and it's like dark. And the gentlemen who were in there were smoking cigarettes, so there was this kind of like...
No one was smoking cigarettes.
Or, no, the lawyer was. The lawyer was smoking, so there was this kind of like there's like this haze, and then in there are 2 full-on sheikhs, which means full headdress, big long beards, like Saudi Arabia, like exactly what you would expect. And I was like, oh my God. And you know what I mean? I was really nervous about what's going on. And I was like, well, thank God Noureen's here. And I turned around and she was gone because she couldn't.
They asked me to leave. I'm not allowed to be in the same room.
So there I am sitting there with this guy. And luckily one of them, oh my God, one of them spoke English. And so they were trying to talk to me. Well, we found out they were Salafis, yeah?
Not Salafis.
But like
normal people. They're Ikhwan.
Yeah.
Sure.
So they were Muslim Brotherhood. I mean, they were really super uber religious people. But in remember what I said, tribe and religion, your social capital does come with one of those 2 things. And so these men being uber religious had a lot of cachet. And that's why the lawyer brought them in. And so they sat down listening to me. And they were very sweet. They were the nicest men they changed my entire interpretation of Islam in that meeting because they were genuinely, sensitively asking. They apologized. They said, Mr. Andy, I'm very sorry for even asking you this, but we we really do need to ask about how you feel about Islam and why you converted to Islam and what's in your heart. If we are going to help you, you need to explain to us why you should. And I remember telling them, like, at that point, I can barely remember what came out, but whatever it was, they smiled. I mean, they were genuinely happy with. I talked about, the kids I had met that were Muslims and who had talked to me about Islam and tried to, convert me when I was their teacher. And I remember thinking that they were genuinely doing it because they loved me. They liked me and they wanted me to be with them. And
they knew you're a good person, like leaving your country, United States, to come to a village in Jordan to do Peace Corps. They thought like that was a very kind and generous thing to do for a young man, to teach our kids here to like English and help them. That was itself like you're already doing a great thing to the country without even being Muslim. You're not,
So at one point he said, okay, well, are you ready? And then they brought you back in and we sat there next to each other and she was looking at the floor, and we're sitting, and I was looking at the floor this way, because you know how there's some people, they just have gravitas, they just have, these were substantive men. And I remember I've never been so intimidated by two people in my life. And at the end of the conversation, they were asking her questions and me questions about our relationship. And did they ask us if we had ever been together? They were asking us, they were trying to ask about our level of intimacy without asking. So they were like, have you ever been alone together? And we were like, no. And they were like, have you ever, these types of, questions.
They were trying to find out, are we trying so hard to get married because something wrong happened?
Something happened and they're trying to rush.
Wrong, what I mean, because Arab Muslim girls expected to be virgin until the day they get married. So they wanted to, that was the last thing to question. Is that why? You mistake and you want to cover it? It was like, absolutely not.
And then I remember they asked me, they said, are you ready to assume the responsibilities of being a husband? And without even thinking about it, I said, bamut, which means till death. And they smiled the biggest smile ever. And they realized, I think that they realized that we were just a couple of kids who really loved each other, that just wanted to be together. And then,
we went in the right way, because we could take off to Lebanon and just married on paper there without religion, without anything, and tell the whole country, Besides, we don't care about you, but we did our best to do it the right way, so they should help us.
And they came back, and later, and they said that to me, they said, when you kept coming back is when we realized that you were doing it for the right reason. There is a key part to this, too. Between court visit 2 and court visit 3, she had to go get emancipated from her father, which in Jordan, that law had only been in place from Queen Rania. How long had that been around, where you could actually even do that? Where you can get to, separate from your father.
Yeah, wasn't long.
It was like a year. She's one of the first people in Jordan to actually emancipate herself use the law, emancipate. And even then, they didn't want to do it. And what we found out...
They looked down on me, yes. When I bring the subject in the court, or I tell the judge, I don't have a relationship with my father. He was not a good father. That's not even something you can even say, how dare you, he's your father. Even if he was not a good father still, he's your father, you can't say these things. You can't try to have a life without your father's approval.
And remember, I didn't know any of this stuff was going on. I didn't understand any of this. This is all, I all found out this later. They were telling us later that they were making phone calls everywhere trying to find a legal justification why they could say no. And they couldn't. That's the thing. That they kept going through, what they said was, you kept going through the steps. Here, let me make it so you can see Noureen a little bit better.
Thank you.
They said you kept going through the steps. We couldn't say no. You kept coming back.
Yeah.
And so they said, okay. So then we're sitting there with them, and I'm not making this up. The two sheikhs, they pull out a cell phone, and remember that first judge that was really rude to us and said no? They called him up, and they proceeded to chastise him like he was an 8-year-old. And I remember him.
Because they are on a higher level, because he's a Sharia judge. They are higher than him.
That's an important thing. These men, they had no elected office. They weren't government officials. These were just really, really religious people.
Respected.
And they called a judge, and I'm not kidding. He kept saying that you could hear him, and it was so bad. You could hear this man scrambling to try and explain himself. And he's like, oh, whoa, sir, I'm so sorry. And this guy was he's like, who are you asking? And the problem was that the guy had asked why I became a Muslim. And in Islam, you're really not allowed to inquire as to, it's my heart and God, it's not you. So when they asked me that, they had broken a rule. And so he's yelling at me. He's like, who the hell do you think you can ask this guy? And then he's like, shut up, I don't want to hear it. And he hung up on a judge.
Yeah.
And remember, I don't know any of this right now. So all I hear is two Arab men screaming at each other. And I don't understand. And the lawyer is there going, tell him I'm here. Tell him I'm here. And they had to hold him back. It was funny. And they said, okay, go home and we're going to call you tomorrow. And then the next day they called. They said, get ready. We got in a car and they took us to a refugee camp court.
Remember, tell him about the Qadi al-Qudaa, the biggest one we went to his office.
So here's what happened: is between that night and the next day, the case went all the way to the Supreme Court of the country.
The Sharia law, yeah.
That's how high they appealed. They all appealed all the way up. But we had those two sheikhs advocating for us.
But we have to go there.
So
meet with the biggest one there.
And we had to meet with them, and they were trying, and that was scary.
Yeah.
And the lawyer and the judge was like, all right, whatever. And so our marriage certificate is signed by the Supreme Court of the country.
Because no one
wanted to say yes. And just to show you how much their solution to the problem was take them to the most out of the way court that you can find with the youngest judge that we know. And just go and we'll shame him into doing it. And I'm not kidding. We walked into this judge's office, and this is in a refugee camp. That's how far we had to go. In the Palestinian refugee camp. And I remember in this judge's office, those two sheikhs went behind the desk and stood over this guy's shoulder and said, sign here, salamu alaikum, I'll see you later. And then we went in the other room, and they said, congratulations. And we're like, why? And they're like, you're married now. I'm like, shut up, really?
Yeah.
And that's how and that's how that happened. And from that point on, then we had our marriage a little while later. And it went, but the crazy thing is, and we found this out only a few years ago, is that not long after that, the parliament changed the law so that you had to be a Muslim for
a year
before you could marry
in the country.
And we don't know for a fact that it was us, but we're going to tell our daughters that till the day we die, because that was too coincidental. And at anyone at this point, like that's by the end, and I think we talked about this a lot, that at any point we could have bailed, and that we kept coming back. And
that was actually my family. They looked at Andy completely different after because he stayed and he kept going back and he kept trying. So he was like, stick to his words, and that's what he wants. Because my mom said, I was through the whole time waiting for him to say, well, this is not working, I'm leaving. And she was thinking like, that might, like in her head, might be like kind of relief for me. Mm-hmm. Because she was, someday gonna come to the country here, like United States, I'm gonna leave her. So for her, she wasn't like, yeah, she loved me, she loved Andy, but with all the mess happening, I don't think it's a good idea. But for him staying, like sticking around and do the whole thing, she was like, he must be really loves you.
What? So we were busy, we're talking something. Well, we found out later, and remember how I said the tribe was a big part of this too? So what they told us later was that the judges weren't necessarily doing it for religious reasons. No. What they told us later was that they were actually, because one of the older brothers sat down with me because I was really frustrated, and I got really mad, and I kept saying, well, why don't I'll just take you to America, we'll get married, we'll come back. And the brother started to giggle, and he said, all right, Andy, listen to me. You need to sit down for a minute. And he proceeded to tell me, he's like, listen, Andy, we like you. We really do love you, and we really do want you to marry her. But you got to understand that if one of our cousins doesn't approve of this, we don't have.
The way it's done.
The first thing, the way it's done, there's nothing we can do about it. We can't do it. So you have to go through this, Andy. You have to do this. And then he said something that really resonated, and he was trying to be polite, but I knew what he was saying. He's like, look, and Andy, if you take her off to America and marry her without our permission, he said this, he's like, we don't have a choice. And he said, and we would come get her. And I knew what that meant.
Come get her means like,
and he said,
the end of me.
And he said, and he was saying, and it wouldn't be, and he was trying to like, it wouldn't be us. It would be another member of the tribe whose honor you have offended by taking her. So Andy, if you love her, you got to keep doing this.
Or leave her alone.
And I kept coming back. And so what we found later was all of these judges were really not, they were saying no because they were really, especially because her father wasn't there. They were really afraid that if someone in the tribe found out that they let her do that, that they wouldn't blame us because we did everything right, that they would take it out on the judge. And that's, the lawyer was trying really hard to explain this, like, you gotta understand that there's a system and you gotta, and we...
And tribal law is huge.
Huge. Tribal law supersedes civil law by far.
Yeah.
By far. So that's but then even that, like, I was still living in Israel
6 months.
for 6 months. So the first 6 months of marriage we spent apart, and I'd cross, and it is to get romantic. That's the most heavily fortified border in the world, and I would cross that border every weekend to go to it's on a map. It's only about 20 miles apart.
Because you can take a bus.
Because you can take a bus, so it should only really be 20 miles. But because that border is there, it's a 5-hour journey to get through all of that. And that's what I would do. On Fridays, I'd leave, and I'd get on the bus and go see Noureen, and then on Sunday I would go back and be miserable for a week, and then we'd see each other again.
Yeah.
And then what else?
And then you got a job in Jordan.
Then I got a job in Jordan
teaching.
We got an apartment, and a year later, Yasmina came, and then I got a job working at King's Academy.
2 years later.
2 years working at King's
We
Academy.
lost our first baby.
We had a miscarriage the first time. And then, we lived there for a while, and then we came here, and we were just this kind of. We had Miriam a couple years after that, and Miriam's name is a peace offering from Noureen to our family because Miriam is the mother of Jesus, and she's in both religions.
Right.
So he's in Islam as well. So she said, well, let's name her Miriam as an offering of seed. We can still have the same thing, and it was a beautiful. My family was very touched by that, and that's when this kind
and
of.
we love the name Miriam.
And we love the name Miriam too. So there you go.
Yeah.
So romantic.
It's just,
So crazy.
see, I always people so how'd you meet? And I'm like, sit down. And you have to, because all of if you don't understand that, it doesn't, none of this, the strength that is required for us to overcome, what I would assume you want to know is all the cultural things and all of the different, the different backgrounds. The only way we can do that is we genuinely have to know that we love each other. And from that point on, we realized, because if we could get through that, we realized, we've said this over and over, if we could do that, we can do anything. So we've been, even this, we're in lockdown in Los Angeles, and we're sitting here and be like, yeah, but, we got married, so, could be worse. So, I mean, that's our thing. And every marriage, we go through ups and downs too, but if it starts like that, then, everything else is easy.
It's a commitment. How is your mother now, Noureen, with you being here?
She's fine. She's okay with it. She would love for us to move closer if it's not back to Jordan, but she understands that the kids they build a life here. They have friends here. Education is better here. So she understands that. She's not a selfish person who's going to be like, no, I want you to come live close to me. She understands, as long as I promise her, we're going to come back soon, we're going to visit, because she doesn't want to visit here.
Right.
She wants us to go back.
That's a big thing too. So all of our future plans do have that element in it of because we send money back home every month, and then we try to take care of her, and so all of our future plans involve how do we take care of her mother as well. So I would say the relationship's really good. I love her. I kiss her on the forehead and everything. It's fantastic. She didn't have to say yes. That's the biggest part about all this, and I've said this to her a number of times. She did not have to say yes to any of these things, and she has never asked me for anything. She's never asked for any sort of support. She's never asked for any clarification of how I feel or anything like that. She's just accepted, the two idiot kids that stood in her living room and said we're going to get married, and she's like,
respected our choices.
All right. But she's always respected our choices, and that's something that you can't say for all parents, especially in really rigid social structure. So at a certain point, we kind of said to ourselves, well, I'm pretty sure this must be our fate because it's too crazy to be random. It's got to be, So we take that. We always the Arabic word is nasib, which means destiny, and every once in a while that just kind of comes out why did that happen? We just kind of go nasib.
Yeah.
Every.
So, When did you say "I love you"? Because I have the picture of what color is your favorite color, mountains, ocean, and then how did that evolve into, "Hey, we should get married"? What was the in between?
So that's tricky. In Arabic, there is no word for like. In Arabic, there is only love and hate. It's a You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I was trying to express to her how I felt. I went to the words in Arabic that I knew how to say, and she would say it back to me, and then it just kind of evolved into that. And then I don't know that we ever had a moment in which I said, I love you. I think at a certain point, we just translated to each other what we were trying to say, and it ended up being love. I mean, love, oh, this is romantic. That was the word we used even from the very beginning. So love was there from the beginning, even if we weren't really sure of those words we were supposed to be using. If it, you know what I mean? But because we kept saying it to each other because we didn't have any other words in Arabic to use, and so that was.
I would say we just let it be. We didn't put so much like I'm gonna think about what I'm gonna say next, or it was too early to say like I love you or something like that. I was just being me, and he was just being himself, and we didn't really think much of what to say and when to say.
Like I saw that question. I remember thinking like I don't remember when one of us said it. I really don't. Like it wasn't that. It was just we feel like we didn't have time. We were too busy trying to figure out the 99% of the other stuff we were saying that we didn't. Just went to the words we knew, and that one of those heb, which is in Arabic for love, was just the word we knew, and it just was there from the. I would say from the very beginning.
Yeah.
Well, you'd never spent time really alone. So when you started living together, were there adjustments? Because that's a big switch.
When we got married, I tell people this, and they have a hard time. By the time we got married, when we actually said marriage and we signed the certificate, we had spent maybe like 14 hours total in each other's presence. The rest of the time over text.
Yeah.
And then so from that point on, I think the honeymoon was the first time that we really kind of
a week.
Like a week, yeah.
But when we lived together, when we had our own place and we're a family now, we're living together. Yeah, it was different.
The hard, but like we just had no choice but to like, well, we're living together, and then.
Yeah.
Well, what were the issues? Like, who does housework or rhythms? Like, who sleeps when or.
So and we were thinking about it, like the gender role stuff.
For us, maybe the way I grew up with seeing my mom is the one who's doing everything. I thought I was like growing up doing the same thing with my mom, so I was kind of start doing everything like cleaning, cooking, take the car to be fixed and stuff like that because I grew up with a woman who was very independent and I didn't never ask him to do anything. And we didn't really, it never bothers me when I have other people comment saying like, yeah, but why Andy couldn't take the car? Because he doesn't speak the language. I do. I know like how to take the car to change oil or something like that.
There was a lot of things of she just did them, and so you do this thing where you're thinking to yourself, is this a cultural thing? You know what I'm saying? Is this like a cultural thing? So then you don't say anything, and then so it just kind of evolves, and that's what I mean. And then because slowly we learn that she doesn't necessarily like to clean all the time, and I'm like,
also in Middle East culture, it's not normal to ask your husband to go wash the dishes or something like that. And for me, I never thought about asking him, not because I'm a woman and he's a man, because I can do it. I can do it all. I'm doing everything. And I remember first time I started feeling that's not okay. When I got pregnant, I was started getting tired and stuff. Then I said to him like, oh, I need you to help. And he was like, I'm happy too. Just let me know what you want me to do. Because every time he tried to do something, I will stop him right away like, no, this is not how I clean the kitchen. No, this is not how I do it. Like, it has to be my way because it's my house. It's the woman thing to do. That's the Middle Eastern mentality was like stuck with me.
And that was another thing in terms of cultural stuff. That was, if you want to know what one of the major issues was, it was things that got left unsaid because we both assumed that it was a cultural element of the other. So like when I didn't, and we didn't want to offend each other. So when she would do the housework and I would say, no, honey, I got it. She's like, no, I got it. I would feel like, oh, she is going to take it as an insult to her, wifely duties if I tried it. So then I would sit to the side, and then, but at the same
Like, what do you
time,
mean you're gonna cook? My cook is not good enough. You want to do it?
See?
Like that type of thing. Not because like I want to rest today. Maybe you turn to cook.
I'm from the Midwest. Like we don't want to bother. We don't want to bother anybody.
And his mom was clear. She said, make him do the laundry or something. I was like, first thing, I was like, why is she saying that? But now I understand.
And as time went on, we just started to figure things out. Oh, she doesn't like to sweep the house all day. Like, huh? And then I would like volunteer for it sometimes. And we still have similar to the way it started, but with much, much more of a. I don't think you're afraid of assigning me tasks, and I'm not afraid of.
I learned with the years and with the kids and with everything. I literally maybe learned how to say how I feel more without thinking about I'm going to offend the person, because we're a family. We're a big family now. We're a family of 4. So I told him when I am going to ask for help, he mostly put the kids in bed. I do the cleaning. He will do the beds. He will read for the kids before bed. That time, like he would take care of entertaining the kids.
Yeah.
And for me, that's the time I would like take a break by like being in the kitchen, doing my own thing. So it kind of worked without even like setting a schedule for it.
When the girls got to that, not baby anymore, but that kind of toddler bedtime story stage, then it started. The roles got much more defined. Oh, okay, Daddy does bedtime stories.
Daddy plays with me.
Daddy plays. Daddy, you know what I'm saying? And when that happened, then it became much more. Okay, now we kind of have an idea of kind of where to go with it.
Yeah.
That's what it seemed like to me too.
Yeah.
So Noureen, if you work at night and sleep during the day, how do you make time for family? That seems really difficult.
Well, I only work 2 days a week at night because of the pandemic and the kids are home. So I didn't want to lose my job and just be home.
3 days.
So not 2. So I decided to take 2 night shifts overnight. So I'll come home. So the rest of the week, the whole week, I'll be home during the day for them online schooling, because he's teaching at the same time. So there's no way he can help them. So I come home at 7 in the morning. I sleep. I put the kids on their Zoom, everything. I stay up with Miriam a little bit. My oldest, Yasmina, she can take care of herself. She doesn't need my help at all. But my little one, because she's first grade, I just sleep for a couple of hours. Wake up, make sure homework is done, lunch is done, everything's done. And around 4 or 5, I will take another nap. And it's only 2 nights. So it's not that bad. I mean, I still have like Saturday, I can sleep all day.
Yeah. And that's with me teaching and doing all of these things too.
And that happened because of the pandemic, because it's better than losing my job.
We're reevaluating our existence in Los Angeles, to be honest with you, because it has forced us to, like, everyone had to adjust to COVID, and the adjustment that we have made is that if she goes nights,
we're grateful.
We can maintain, and we are grateful. Like, we can still maintain an income that is similar to what we had before in a very expensive city, and but it did take, at the beginning. It was a little rough because we weren't I'd sleep by myself, and she'd come home and then she'd go to sleep, and we would
especially when someone's taking a vacation and I have to end up covering a whole week overnight. That was too much.
It's like every night.
And again, me not know how to say no to some things, even if I'm the one who's getting tired or sick or something. But also that was one of my 2021 changes, things I had to make. When I do want to do something, I'm going to say no. And I did talk to my manager directly. I assigned for 2 nights. I'm only doing 2 nights. I can't do more. I have family. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Andy, this is kind of a footnote, but I'm interested in this generation Z students, that people say that they're increasingly anxious, depressed. Generation Y was said to be fragile teacups. Helicopter parents control them, so they don't know how to deal with challenges. What kind of changes have you seen in teens since you've been teaching? Really?
Massive. Almost, I would say, between millennials to, I call them Gen Z, that is going to be a big change. millennials, my millennial students that I've had in the years, they do fit the stereotype somewhat. I mean, I'm not trying to be, I don't want to I paint with such a broad brush, but there are some of those, that fragility that you mentioned, the notion that their entire existence has to play to a narrative that they have in their head. If it doesn't, it doesn't, they get really upset and anxious and things like that. What I would say about Generation Z though is that every generation is a reaction somewhat to the one that came before. And the difference with the kids now, and I've said this to a lot of people. There's a book that just came out, and it was supposedly about millennials, but this isn't that wouldn't be the generation I would apply it to. The title of the book was "The Ones We've Been Waiting For," and they are infinitely more capable than we are, and I mean that in the nicest way, in that they are much more driven by data-based answers to their questions. They're much less likely to not necessarily distrust authority, but they're not going to just take your word for it. They're going to fact check you. They're going to fact check you as they do it. They're just, you call them woke. I mean, woke implies you were at one time sleeping. This generation woke, if that makes sense. I mean, they woke. They came out woke, and that if there's any downfall that they have is that some of that anxiety that you're seeing is really, really a confusion. And I mean this sincerely, and I've thought about this over the past few days, and I've actually addressed it with them. A lot of that confusion a lot of that anxiety they have is genuine confusion as to why their parents are so anxious and to why their older peers are so anxious. A lot of that anxiety is the reflection of what they're seeing, and they can't understand necessarily why that is. And teenagers, they're fragile. I mean, they're fragile anyway. But and especially in this generation where they're increasingly saying, "Well, prove it. How do you know that? Can you show me where it says that?" And the generation that came before can't, and now they're confused by that. And so, but what I've started to see, and COVID was a biggie, when they noticed that the people weren't following what the science was saying. And that we've told them since they were born, do whatever the science tells you. And they've noticed that we're not doing that. What I've noticed is not necessarily an anger, but I've noticed in the past year an unbelievable acceleration of their maturity. Rapid. Because they do understand the consequences of it. They understand that grandma might not be at next Thanksgiving. They understand that they can't go to school. They're mad at us, to be honest with you. My thing is that they're really pissed off at the adults, to be honest with you. And to be honest, I've found that to be one of the most encouraging things to come out of this, is that they're going to realize very quickly that the world, we've told them, sorry, it goes back to how we met, but we've told them since they were born, they're going to be the future leaders of the world, yet we conveniently forgot to tell them what that looks like. Yeah. The millennials said, well, then I'll tell you what it looks like. This generation says, well, then we're going to do what the data tells us, and you can be quiet and watch Netflix, and we'll do it. I'm more proud, and you chime in too, because Noureen when we looked at the dorm, Noureen interacted with these students every day too. This isn't just a casual observance. Like, we saw them in the dorms, we saw them where they lived. Yeah. They're not impressed with the adults, and to be honest with you, that includes me too. And I'm cool with it, I really am. Good. They're mad. They're activists. They're trying really hard. The climate thing is going to be, Greta Thunberg is going to be a monumental moment, because when she gave that speech about, this is your fault, you did this to us, and now we're going to have to pay for it. I promise you, every teenager knew exactly what she was talking about, and they're equally angry. And yesterday is the same thing. I mean, Wednesday is the same thing. It just seems to me that they're really ticked off that the people that are supposed to have a better understanding of how to do this don't. And I think what you're going to see, the people that we're supposed to learn from don't know what they're doing. So we're just going to take care of it. And I think that's why you're seeing kids younger and younger doing startups, kids younger. Yeah, we're pushing them, but they're doing it. I mean, it's one thing to say do STEM. It's another to have a kid say, we're going to do it on our own. And they're doing it. So I'm sorry. You asked me about something I'm really fired up about.
No, I feel the same way.
I am more enthusiastic about this younger generation of children than I've ever seen in my entire life, because they are really. It's not disillusion. It's all right, that's enough now. I mean, that's what it seemed. Maybe not always, but COVID was a biggie. My students are angry now. They're like, that's enough of this. We're going to take over. And I would say, I'd say that's true for the students I've worked with, and I'd say that's this. And even your little brother is like that too. Like, oh, that's enough. Like, it's the old generation doesn't get it, and that acceleration is just.
I just finished a book about climate girls saving our world, where I interviewed climate girl activists around the world. I'm going to send it to you because you'll love it. And that's exactly what they said. We're angry. We're going to have to do it. But we're pissed that you took our teenage fun years away from us. We have to be doing these Zoom meetings all the time.
You robbed us of our childhood thing. That's what I got to. Yep.
Wow. Well, then, so you're saying, because the study showed these teens in the U.S., UK, and then my climate girls said that they were hearing that in their countries as well, and I had 31 countries involved in the book, that they're increasingly anxious. People like Jean Twenge say it's because of their social media, and they compare themselves, and somebody's more popular than me. But I think that trivializes it. I think they have a lot of pressure on them in this economy, and it's about all their pressures, not just who's popular on Instagram.
That who put on them. See, that's the thing too, is like, I got these students and their parents are making them ram 9 APs into their curriculum of things they don't want to do.
There's so much expected from this generation.
There's so much expected of them, and then when they come to that conclusion of like, you're expecting all of this from us, and you're not doing any of the things that you said you were going to do. And then the big one is like when guys like Elon Musk say, we don't need a college degree anymore. If you can pass the test, we're going to hire you. When they start, that's another one too. They start to realize that the structures and institutions that we've established for them to be able to gain that social capital, at the end of the day, don't really mean anything. The big social media, when a lot of kids realize that you could bank off of just going on YouTube.
I heard that.
The question becomes, why do you want me to be a civil servant somewhere? Like,
or YouTube influencer. That's something.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
It's things like that. Where the anxiety comes from, I think it's a bit of a cop-out to say social media.
I do too.
You said that about millennials. I don't think you can say that because they were born into it. They're used to it. They've seen this before. This is just reality for them. And so the notion that they could somehow be, that their entire, thing is going to be based on what people necessarily think, but that was the way it was when they started it. So I have a hard time believing that phases them as much as me. I'll bet it phases us. I'll be real honest with you. I'll bet it phases us big time. But at the same time, but then look, I'm not a teenager, so I don't want to be speaking for them, but the idea of screens is a big deal because of the dopamine release that the flashy lights do, and I think so that's part of it. And then I think we ascribe I think we're trying to figure out what's causing the behavior, so we're just trying to throw out there all the possible explanations of things we don't get. And I think separating screens and flashing lights and sensory overload that comes with screens and video games and all of these, media and all these things. I think sometimes we say, oh, it's social media, that's the problem. When in actuality, it could just be sensory overload. And that we are put a lot, what they think they're supposed to do is a lot. And at a certain point, they're going to break. And I don't know if that's helping. And as parents, you speak to this too, we had a talk with our daughter yesterday about some of the stuff she's interested in.
How old is she now? Your oldest?
She's
9.
9 and 7.
9 and 7.
9 and 7.
Yeah, we had to talk to her yesterday about things that, a game she's playing, you become obsessed with that game. That's the only thing you're talking about now. You're talking to people who doesn't know your game, so it's not interesting.
Minecraft for 9-year-olds, right?
Minecraft was the first one. Now Roblox was the next one, and then there's another one called Friday Night Freddy's that's coming along too. And what the conversation was, we're never going to tell you what you're allowed to like. You know what I'm saying? You make whatever you want to do is cool.
Force me to like it.
But you pull us into other rooms. She gets way too emotional about it sometimes. We've had to talk to her about that. She's in that world, and that's okay. And we want her to be there, and we want her to make those decisions. But it's a matter of then, okay, but now your behavior is your behavior in that world and your behavior in this world are not the same things. And it's that division of reality that I think is more and more important for us as parents as we've gone through. When the computer goes off, what happened in there is not what's happening here. And that's a big, thing for them. And we're still trying to navigate that too, I would say.
I feel like we have been doing the best we can
We're
with
doing
the
the best we
pandemic, and we don't have nowhere to go, no play dates, nothing. We're like limiting the screen times. Like we can do like playing board games together. Like go just go play together. Get some Barbies and play with them, or like the dolls you have in your room, whatever. Just play, figure something out. And when we start doing that, you will find them. They will have to come up with something to play with. They can entertain themselves, and they're crying first about like, but I have nothing to do. I was like, well, figure it out. I feel it's way healthier than just have them on screen.
And here's
all day.
books, and here's puzzles, and we can go
You
for
can
a
draw.
walk. And
But Gail, there's another thing too about the transition to virtual last year in March that speaks to your first question, because there is one thing. When we went to all virtual, it was very clear very quickly who was comfortable in this environment and who wasn't. And the children exist there all the time.
Yeah.
They play video games online all the time.
It was easy for them.
They knew exactly, the thing, it became really apparent very quickly, they knew exactly how to handle it.
the teachers were struggling, and the parents.
No, but it's beautiful, Gail, because immediately
Parents and teachers.
they noticed that their parents and their teachers had no idea how to function. And one of the sweetest things I've ever seen is the amount of space and leeway that the children last year and this year have given us in terms of their behavior, in terms of their effort level. They're not perfect, of course, but they got it was really kind of amazing to watch how patient they were.
Wow.
Yeah.
As the adults started to figure out, we're still
there's
working at it.
something I don't know how to do. It's not driving my kids to school and ask them to do their homework. I have to set up the computer and be on Zoom, and I don't know how to do that. So first time I had to ask Mina to show me how to set up the Zoom for her sister and how to open the homework at the same time. So for me, it was like, I don't know how to do this, so fine. You be the boss today.
And I cried a couple times after class, not because I was sad, but because I was so overwhelmed, inspired by it. They were like, Mr. Lato, it's okay, we're going to be all right, Mr. Lato. Here's what you got to do, Mr. Lato. I'm going to send you a link. Guys, you want to send him a link? And we'll show him how to do this. Mr. Lato, I just sent you in your email this tutorial video about how to share your screen. Okay, and then Timmy chimes in and is like, hey, Mr. Lato, have you tried?
Your internet will go out and you come back and your kids will still sit.
The internet will go out for 15, 20 minutes, at least 5, 6 times, and I would come back and they would all be there. I don't know what more. Remember what I said? The ones we've been waiting for. Gail, I'm telling you, it's not going to be even close. It's It's not even that we're going to want to turn responsibility over. That they're going to have to take responsibility. It's that we're going to want to very quickly, because we're going to see just that stark difference in how ready they are to deal with this and how we're just going to need to go. You know how sometimes parents are. Well, when I showed my mom the first time how to turn the computer on, it was kind of a weird moment, mom doesn't know how to use the computer, but then at the same time, you feel bad. That happened for every student in America at the same time to every adult relationship they had. And their reaction taught me, I would say, to teach you, it taught us a lot about humanity, to be honest with you. It was really inspiring. I get a lot of, even Wednesday, I got a lot of hope from them. It has nothing to do with me. I'm just going to try to keep my head down and not screw anything else up for the rest of my life. But in terms of turning stuff over, they're capable. They're really capable kids.
And I've heard that from all over the world. Older people say, I rely on kids for my technology teachers. So that's everywhere. How do I use this cell phone? How do I use this? So that gives them a lot of confidence. Plus, the fact that older people have screwed up the planet, those two together make them really strong, the kids.
But also the discourse. See, that was the thing. It was how do you have a debate on Zoom? I had no clue. How do you replicate the things that I know work in the classroom on Zoom? The kids set would teach me, Mr. Lato, if we want to have a debate, here's what you got to do. You got to do this, this, and this. And then when you do it, you have to wait a second so that they can talk. And what they would do is they started to structure they know how to exist online. They know how to use, how you can use the chat on the side. They were using it, and they were using hashtags, and then they would explain to us, okay, but Mr. Led, listen, you got to understand, when you use a hashtag like this, what we use hashtags for, and so they knew way better than we did the evolution that has to kind of happen if you're going to do this, and they were really right there. And that's the thing, is it's one thing to rely on it and to show us how to use it. It was quite another to like start to teach us how to establish new norms. And sorry, you're speaking of something that I'm passionate about.
Me too. Me too. I'm going to send you that Climate Girls book. You two will love it.
I would love to.
You know what I'm also encouraged about is that traditionally young people in the States didn't vote as much as older people, but I think that's changed since Obama maybe, and then this last election. So I think probably young people made the difference in the Georgia runoff with the senators election. So they're voting now, which makes me have hope.
And they're using their tools. If you remember the Tulsa rally, right? Remember the TikTok kids bought up all of the tickets. The Tulsa rally screwed up the whole thing. They learned their power really, really, really quickly, and it became this kind of wonderful maturity. The difference, you want my honest opinion between the difference between millennials and Generation Z, is about 20 years of maturity. That's my honest description of the difference. Just as fragile, maybe, just as technologically capable, but infinitely a much more mature perspective on it and what it can do and what it can mean. And they know their power now. And it's a certain point, like I say this to every adult, I say this to parents at parent-teacher conferences, you want to mess with that? See how that goes for you, So it's there, pick one. What do you want to do?
But on the other hand, we're talking about kids with access to internet. And then that leaves out like the 80% of people in India who live in villages, and they maybe have some kind of little phone, but they're not these sophisticated internet users. Right. And like in the village where you taught when you were in the Peace Corps, that's a whole different world. Is that correct?
Right. Yes. And they made the point, I remember being in the village at the time, and they made that point. They said the difference when you got your first telephone in America in like 1910, you got your first radio in 1920, you got your first TV in 1950, you got your first internet access in 1999. You got your first cell phone in in the year 2000 or whatever. We got all of that in the span of about 5 years. And so the point they kept trying to make to us is they were like, listen, you got to understand, like, you have opened the entire world to a closed society and expected everyone to just kind of handle it like it's cool. You know what I mean? Of course there's going to be people who react negatively. Of course there's going to be people who the world is scary and they lash out. They keep making that point of like, not every kind of like person you call crazy is crazy. They're just scared and don't know what else to do. Yeah. And it's, look, they what did the one guy say? He's like, in the span of 5 years, you've shown us 15,000 new ways to sin. How does a parent, like, what is a dad supposed to tell his daughter about TikTok? You know what I mean? If they just got cell phones 10 years before. So they have to have this massive acceleration, and that I don't envy them either. Is that how do they develop those norms and things like that too?
Noureen, in Jordan, the majority of the population aren't Jordanians, they're Palestinians in refugee camps. Is that correct?
I would say 50-50, yeah.
Not all in refugee camps though.
Oh, you're saying all
the Palestinian, like what percent is Palestinian in Jordan?
I would say 50%.
50% is Palestinian. Yeah. Of the Palestinians, how many of them are in refugee camps though?
So the refugee camps for Palestinians in Jordan is not what you see on TV for Syrians. So it's a whole area built for them. They have their own community, their own houses. It's not like if I want to go rent a house there, I can do that easily, but it's known as, because it's the old name for it.
Like if you went there, but the camps they were originally those tent camps that you see, but then they just stayed. And the reason they stayed is important. The reason they stayed is they did not want to give up their right of return. It's not that they can't. Many of those Palestinians went and became Jordanian citizens. But the ones that are still there are doing so because they believe if they leave and accept Jordanian citizenship, they will give up their rights and claim to Palestine itself. And so...
But also the UNRWA is helping the Palestinian host there.
UNRWA.
Yeah, we call it the UNRWA. they're still helping the Palestinians who stayed in these camps. They're not really in tents or anything. It's houses, it's like supermarkets, schools, everything. But they have their own set. They have good schools because it's set up by
The UN.
The UN. Good healthcare, maybe better than other for Jordanian in some type of villages like the one you lived in. Like it's just like a trade for them, maybe I guess.
Some of the people that are in the camps, the UN is responsible for them, and sometimes the UN has a bit higher standards than maybe the local governments do. Yes. So a lot of people stay in the camps and stay there. So
what I'm trying to think about is that what we're saying about these youth who know so much, it only applies to a kind of a middle class, upper middle class group of kids around the world, and that there's these kids who live in villages and refugee camps and rural who don't have access to all that stuff. So
they all have access to see what the world look like, but I don't think they have access to live it. But they all have the access to the dream of that's what I'm gonna do. And I find the kids from villages in Jordan, I'm speaking only about Jordan, they work so hard. I would say, let's say, harder than my own brother, who was a middle class. He had this life already for him. They work harder on, I want to reach the middle class, like a teenager middle class type of life, or dress like them, or speak English like them, have my Instagram page like them.
And an important thing to remember is that, like, and I have to make this point always to people to understand in terms of access. The vast majority of the world has free to air satellite television, meaning that all you need is you can make a satellite dish out of a Coke can.
We don't pay cable there.
They don't have cable. You don't have to pay. It's free.
It's free.
So even in the refugee camps, if you got a $20 television and a plate that you can stick to, aim at the satellite and a kind of cheap receiver, you've got 1,000 channels, and so they can see our movies. So even if they don't have, let's say, the phone in their hand, they can watch movies all the time with people in their hands. And also remember, they do occupy the same cultural space as Dubai and Doha and those uber wealthy countries. Yes. And so a lot of their culture, even if they're in Syrian refugee camps or they're in Palestinian refugee camps, their culture is determined by what they're seeing in front of them, regardless of what's outside the house. And so if they're seeing Dubai on TV, they're going to think that that's what their world is like. And so that it's a really strange thing. It's like there's this really quick acceleration because, and in a weird way, because it's free. And that's the thing. Remember something too, DVD piracy is a big thing in the world. So there's many children in this world who have seen way more movies than I have. Because they cost 25 cents because they're pirated. They're just 25-cent little rewritable discs. So the notion that they don't have access, remember, the future finds a way. Whether you're ready for it or not, the future's going to pull you into it whether you're not. And it just seems to me that that's one of the things, that whether they're going to go, they'll find a way to get there to the future, whether you want it or not. And we can say, okay, the Earth is flat. At a certain point, that when that high-speed internet, when that internet cable got there, it was a real quick switch after that. And I think it's important to always remember that even in the lowliest refugee camps around the world, you will see satellite television everywhere because it's free and it's worldwide. So you can make an argument that they are infinitely more exposed to different cultures and different peoples that way than we are, who are much more channeled into.
I always say we know about you guys.
That's a great point.
Way more than you think you know about us. Yep. Because the way you know about us in the Middle East, I'm not talking about you or Andy, but I mean like in American in general. I find it that the way they know about us is the movies they watch, which is always bad, make us look like backwards, terrorists, bad people, just weird people, or what they saw on CNN or not, Fox or something, like another terrorist attack happened here or something like that. But we know, I know how Georgia looked like because I saw it in a movie, and I was like, wow, that's so beautiful. I know there's different accents in America. people in America don't know. They think every Muslim speak Arabic. Like, no, it's not.
That was the biggest shock when I got there, is how much more they knew about my country than I knew about theirs. And I used to think it was, because America were the biggest and the best, and it was like, nah, you're
out there.
The media is about the U.S.
But they always make the point: what have you done to show, see us? And I didn't have an answer, and that's when I realized that I really need to listen to what the culture is all about.
Yeah.
What do you teach? What subject do you teach in high school?
I teach history. I teach world history, and I teach Middle Eastern history. And I teach economics.
Do you teach in private school?
Yeah.
So your kids are probably more sophisticated than some.
No. You would think so. It's the same thing. Take the kid who's been sheltered his whole life. Take the kid who's on those streets. Which one has a more accurate interpretation of what the perspective of the world? Remember, millennial children became millennial parents. So that term helicopter parent, it's really, and that's another reason why they're pissed off, is they realize that everything had been sheltered from them.
But you have the wealthiest students.
And I also have very wealthy students, but that's even worse, because they're sitting there like, I'm uber wealthy, I'm uber, you know what I mean? Why am I so ignorant about so many of the things in the world? And so like one of the reasons that I'm not trying to say they love me, but when I show up, they respond to me really well, because I tell them, like, guys, there's a world out there y'all got to see.
Yeah.
And that's it. When they find out how much they didn't know because it was kept from them, that pisses them off. And that's the one thing, is they keep saying, in teaching we have this phrase now called, sage on the stage versus guide on the side. That for the longest time in education, we were all standing on stage and we were the fountain of knowledge onto them. They've got Wikipedia in their hands. They've got all the knowledge in the world in their hands. What the hell do they need me for?
Yeah.
And so at a certain point, then my style has to change to, instead of, okay, I can't be their source of knowledge, they're going to go, even if I were, they're going to go find the truth anyway. So I might as well give them the tools able to do it. And I think what you're seeing with some of this disconnect with reality and this cognitive dissonance is that gap, in that there's a generation that was responsible for teaching the next one how to deal with the future, and we didn't know how to do it, and so we kind of left it on the side. And now this new generation is realizing, what do you mean you didn't do anything about the planet? Didn't you see the data? And we kept talking about QAnon and shit. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to swear, but like, do you see my point? Like, they're like, what are you talking about? Like, that level of, I don't know how to explain it any better than that. Like, it's just this kind of, we screwed up somewhere here, and I'm still trying to figure that out. And rather than kind of jump in front of them and teach them, I've had to draw myself back much more. And I'll be real honest with you, virtuals help. They do open book quizzes, they do open book tests now. And so the question is, why is that okay? Aren't they going to cheat? And it's like, and then the question is, the only way that they could cheat is having someone else write it. Because how are you supposed to cheat? At the end of the day, it's still going to be, you know what I mean? It's still going to be them. They just used all the resources they had at their disposal.
Which we usually have if you're doing research
Still
anyway.
There?
Yeah. Okay, let's that was fascinating. To finish up with the marriage business, when was the most challenging time? Was it like when you transitioned to the US, or having babies? After the first challenge, what was most challenging?
I think transitioning to the US and the feeling that I have to depend on him with everything, that was big for me, because I hated it. He's busy, he's doing his thing, and remember, he didn't live in the States for also a long time, so he was trying to find his own thing. I just didn't know how to do anything here. I was lucky enough to live in a boarding school when we first came, because it was safe, it was like nice people out there to help if I need help. But I feel like that was the most challenging thing for me throughout our marriage. But now it's like, it's fine. Now it's easy. It's over. You just have to go through the first thing, and then it's fine.
I would say last year, was one of the harder parts, and not because of anything. It wasn't like it took it. It forced us. We had to talk it out. The culture shock of Los Angeles, because the other part of it is not just that we're in LA. She works at a boutique 5-star hotel in Beverly Hills, and I teach at an uber preppy private school. So the culture that we showed up in, coming from Peace Corps and
Quaker school, they were totally different mindset than the luxurious life.
So our reaction to Los Angeles, Noureen's was much better than mine. Noureen's, she'd already kind of done that when she came. And so when we got to LA, it was like, oh, Sin City, USA. You know what I mean? She kind of took it with. She was a little bit more able to kind of deal with it. Whereas me, the level of, I don't mind telling you, the level of confusion. I didn't know what I was. I didn't know how to fit in here to a certain extent. I didn't know how to explain all of this to her or my children and everything. And we had moved halfway across the country. I didn't handle that well. And, emotionally, it was really bad for me. And then COVID came. And it's kind of like a slap to the face. It's when we got that difficulty and then we looked around at all of these uber wealthy, rich people going through a really rough time because their whole reality kind of came down. We suddenly realized, oh, wait a minute. Reality is what we had lived through. It's the real world is much closer to what we understand it to be than what this world that we have been trying to inhabit was. And as we started to watch all these uber wealthy, narcissistic, Los Angeles, like Hollywood-esque kind of people deeply, deeply, deeply struggling to deal with it, and we realized, like, it's not that hard. I mean, it's not like marriage in a refugee camp hard, you know what I mean? When we realized how strong that we actually were, how do I explain it? How ready we were to deal with this compared to everybody else who really genuinely wanted everybody to believe they could deal with this, but in actuality couldn't because they never really had to deal with that.
You were used to adapting. You'd adapted many times.
We were able to adapt.
Adapt to the life in Jordan. Even if I was from Jordan, we still living with an American, marrying an American. That was a whole new thing we had to get to learn to do. Then coming to the United States, my first time was in America. Then coming to Pennsylvania. Try to find a job, work on that, coming to LA. So I will say a little bit, maybe for me, it was easier than Andy because my life before Andy, when I was a child, was not an easy life. So I always had this like survival mode in me. So I would always call myself, I don't have a dream job or I don't have a dream car. I will make it work. So because this is how I grew up. Most of Middle Eastern are the same way. I always say, like, not literally Middle Eastern, Jordanian are the same way. We don't have a dream thing like you guys have here. I'm lucky to have a job. You know what? I'm going to learn how to love it. I have a car. Grateful that I have a car.
I learned a lot about privilege. From living together in that. But no, I'm serious. Yeah. When we look at job descriptions, she looks at what it pays. I look at the schedule. For my family. I look at the description and try to figure out if it fits into my life plan. Like that, and I know that's weird. You know what I'm saying? I know that's weird
here too because you're supposed to do what you love, right?
See,
but for me, I never did.
That's privilege. Doing what you love is privilege, but we had the work living together and seeing that observation is what made up me at least understand. And I think. You understand? Like she's taught me a lot just by how she's dealt with this, and she's dealt with coming to America way better than I could deal with going to Jordan. I'm in awe of my wife's ability to survive and do this. She's at the top of her game in a country that's not hers and in a second language, and I need my hand held to go to the bathroom after. You know what I'm saying? Like I need my hand held to
go to LA.
To just exist. And that was the thing, is when we realized that, like, when you get to LA, everybody seems to know what's going on except you. They don't. They're just really good at pretending they do because a lot of the superficiality that comes with the Hollywood crowd kind of thing kind of dictates that culture. And so then you get insecure. You know what I mean? And that hit me like a truck. But, she's been insecure for 6 years since we got here. So she was just kind of like, well, what else is new? Whereas I took it as... this kind of midlife crisis kind of, I don't know what I'm supposed to do,
I'm supposed to save the family, like the family.
I'm supposed to save the family, you know what I mean? And when COVID hit,
was something.
Yeah.
So if you do have a conflict, what's your method of resolving it? It sounds like you haven't had many conflicts.
We have. But I love Andy's grandma and grandpa. Grandma started in 91. They've been married for 72 years. And I asked them, how do you guys manage to do that? Because my parents got divorced. My mom got married again and divorced again. So I'm sure I'm not taking my advice from, don't get me wrong, I'm not gonna take, if I want to survive with this person, I don't think I'm gonna ask them for advice. So Grandma gave me a great advice. She said, never go to bed angry.
And that helped. I know that's an old one. That helped a lot. And in fact, we were talking about that. There's only been a couple of times that's actually happened.
In LA.
And it was only in LA, and it was
It was stupid.
But we were texting each other from the other rooms. We were having the argument, but we were not in the same room. And then the next morning we woke up, had breakfast, and kissed and made up. And so not going to bed angry, I think, is the bit. Would you say?
I think it's the best thing, and understand the person you're with. I know he doesn't mean to insult me, or he doesn't mean to hurt me. I know he doesn't have a bone in him to hurt a person. So understanding the person, and he knows I'm the same way. So even if I say sometimes, I will say something stupid because the language barrier, again, sometimes I don't have enough words to explain how I exactly feel. And there's a huge word I heard on TV or see they used it, and I use it in something little, it doesn't take that big word.
There was one, and this happened just this year, where you can convince yourself that you have this linguistic understanding, but it's language. There's words that fall through the cracks. And so what happened, the word to pressure someone, to feel pressured, she heard it used on TV. It was on TV or something like that.
Yeah.
And then we were having a discussion, and I was trying to ask her if she would, I don't remember what it was. It was something that I was trying to get her to do something that it was just, that I don't think she wanted to do.
About doing something.
We were talking about something, and then she said, Andy, but I feel like you're pressuring me. And in that instant moment, I knew exactly, she had never said it before. I didn't know the word in Arabic, so I wasn't I could understand what it means to feel under pressure to make a decision to do something. But when she said it, immediately I knew what she said, and I took a step. I immediately felt horrible about myself because I realized it was 10 years of her feeling you know what I mean? We're getting pizza for dinner, right?
Yeah.
But she didn't know how to say, Andy, I just feel like you're pressuring me to get pizza when I don't want to get pizza. Yeah. Right? But she didn't want to say, I don't want it. She wanted to say, I'll do it because I love you. You know what I'm saying? We'll order pizza because I love you, but I want you to know that you're making me uncomfortable by trying to get me to order pizza when I don't order pizza. And that pressure that you're putting on me is sort of this, which I remember even in the moment when it happened, it shocked me to the point where I sat up and I was like, oh, honey, I didn't realize that that's how you felt.
Yeah, and I remember I had to tell you because you asked me something, and I didn't know how to explain it because, yes, I do speak English, but not... sometimes I find myself... sometimes when you get tired, if you speak a different language, when you get tired or jump in between two languages, your brain just stopped for a second.
Right.
I didn't know how to explain it, and he was I think you were asking me, so you don't want to answer, you don't want to tell me, you don't want to, I was no, I just don't know how to say it.
She said something
and I told him, I said something
this made me cry.
I told him you sometimes forget that I'm not from here. I want you to remember I'm trying so hard.
She said something to me once that made me cry. She was like, Andy, sometimes after we fight, I have to go look up what you said.
Yes.
I know what you said. No, but that's horrible.
Yes.
She would be like, yeah, okay, I get it. And then she would have to go look up what I was saying. And I just assumed that because she didn't say anything at the time.
She's okay.
That was a biggie. Those two happened this year. When she told me the word pressuring me, and then when she told me, there's times I don't know what you're saying, and I get mad and sad that I'm getting mad at you because I don't know what you're trying to say to me, and I don't have the words. So I have to go look. I have to try to remember what you said and then type it out phonetically on the keyboard. And sometimes I can't find the word, and that just brought my whole world. That actually was part of the fueling of look how wrong I've been this whole time. that was part of the the whole thing. And then when I took stock, but then that was we built on top of that sense, and we're in a much. I would say this is. I think this is probably the strongest we've ever. Even going all the way back to the beginning.
Yes, we are.
And we needed LA to do it, and we're gonna get tattoos. We said that we're gonna get tattoos when we leave.
LA before we leave.
That says Los Angeles because it really, 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 really was. It tested everything.
Yes.
And so, like, when your back's against the wall, you have no choice but to either fight it and we decided to fight. And Gail, let me get this out of the way. We fight really, Scorpio, dude. You know what I mean? It's not, it comes, it goes. You know what I mean? When our fights get hot real quick, and one of the things that we do.
But they get done.
But they get done. That's the other part. It gets done. It gets taken care of. We kind of scare each other into believing, oh, this is a really big deal. If there was one cultural thing we got to work on, it's trying to modulate that in front of family. Because they're not always sure what the hell we're talking, especially when we drift in Arabic. So there's been a lot of times I think family has thought that the marriage was about to be over when we were really just having a discussion about what came in the mail today or something like that. You know what I mean? But it goes hot quick because that's how we are. And in that, you can say it's bad, but at the same time, it gets out. It might be painful, it might be messy sometimes, but we don't have to go to bed angry about it, But sometimes, maybe that's not, we're loud. I'm sure the neighbors, we've woke the neighbor, not woken them.
No, we don't. We don't.
It's not that loud, but we never yell.
But it's like this small things. Like, oh, I told you to put this here, but my tone will be like the Arabic way. Like the
see what I'm saying? Yeah.
Because we do have a tone. And I find out here in America using that tone is like, no, that's not okay. Because I could talk to my brother, like, I told you not to put this here.
Can you get the charger? Because this is run out of battery.
And he will be like, yeah, but why are you mad? You could say it nicer. And this is like type of like, I just asked you.
I just said it.
Until I say like, I didn't mean to say it this way. It takes us a little bit of time. Because I don't want to just admit it.
And it just, we work it out. And that's where we're at. Gail, man, you're getting a lot, man. Like this is, some of this is just coming out for the first time now.
Yeah, honestly, yeah.
But that's, everything that we've said is 100% true. Yeah. That's it. Really, LA was a bad one, but we're stronger now for it because we had to revert back to uncomfortable.
What part of LA do you live?
That's true. We are much more happy in uncomfortable situations than we are in comfortable situations. And when we realized that, it made we immediately fell back in love again very quickly for that reason. Because we realized that you can't take two warriors out of the battle. And this isn't it.
You sure?
It's not an iPhone. And expect them just to adjust to peacetime normally. And I don't use the war version, but remember in the Middle East, there's crap going on all the time, And so when you develop that sense, I always tell people is you get this low intensity all the time, your threshold is much, much, much higher. And so when we're around in America and everybody is so uber comfortable, I think that's the one thing the cultural difference that we couldn't figure out when we got here is how, the culture of comfort that we weren't used to. You know what I mean? We're used to struggle, and we're used to everybody that we know. Oops, sorry. We're used to everybody that we know kind of struggling. And when we couldn't, when we weren't surrounded by that, we didn't know how to kind of adjust. And then when COVID kind of happened, we realized nobody knows how to adjust. Except the people that have had to do it, and we've had to do it. It just made it. I don't want to speak for her because that's one thing that as an American, cis white male that I've had to adjust to is that when we do talk to people, I really, because she said that to me once. She's like, Andy, they see me as this stupid Arab girl who doesn't know anything, right? You can't talk over me. You know what I mean? You have to let me speak. And I've learned that I've had to.
Because they look at us different. Because if an American couple does it, they would be, oh, it's fine, it's normal. But if Andy, I would ask him sometimes, oh, can you answer? Because language or stuff, people will look at it as oh,
I'm giving permission.
She can't speak, or she's asking him for permission.
Or they think that I'm right. They think that I'm talking for her because I'm controlling her or something like that. And it's not the case. And one of the words, I gotta tell you something, you need to write this down. that show 90 Day Fiancé is one of the worst things that could possibly. Have you ever heard of it before?
I've heard of it, but I haven't seen it.
I would. If you want to know, I would do it as a research. Honest to goodness, because it really is of like. The one advantage we had is we stayed for 5 years, so and the kids were born in Jordan. So by the time we got here, you couldn't really claim she was doing it for the green card.
No.
You know what I mean? Like,
Never.
you can't claim that. But those people on that show have to deal with that, and it's a really uncomfortable situation of where we still have relatives call it like who say little under the table things that are like
that's the long life plan.
They watch that show and then they're like, oh, so that's how she did it. Right?
Yeah, I never tried to apply for any type of paper when we lived in Jordan for 5 years.
She didn't even apply for citizenship for a while.
Never. I didn't even apply for like a green card or more. I have my visitor visa to America. Our first 5 years of being 6 years of being married because I don't live here. I didn't need it. So people for them they don't understand that. You mean someone from Middle East doesn't dying for U.S. citizen? Like, no, it's not going to add to me. I'm still the same person. But I applied for it now because it makes my life easier.
And we need you to vote.
To do it. And I can vote.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
First time she got sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry. That's it. Go ahead.
What do you do for fun? Because Masters and Johnson said pair bonding is based on the shared memory of good times. So in the face of 2 jobs, 2 kids, these cultural adjustments, what do you do for fun?
We spend time with our children.
Some people do like date nights or once a week or something like
we're
that for the
working-
couple.
We're working at, there's one,
even before.
but we've had that discussion too. Like we need to
Yeah,
start.
well, I'm going to do it more. I will believe like because we do want to do date night. I mean, we put the kids in bed. We love.
We sit and watch TV.
Like
and
we pick
it's
a new
cheesy,
show,
but it's.
and we just watch the whole thing. Let's say
We don't.
tonight or something.
How much time do we really spend apart? Like we don't really like. We always said we only spent like 20 minutes with each other when we got married. I don't think we've been outside of each other's presence, to be honest with you, other than like a conference that I've had to go to or something, for even like a day or two without each other. And so like, what do we do for fun? We exist.
And for some people, sometimes date
Together.
night is too much work, and I'm one of the people that date night is sometimes can be too much work for me.
In fact, the only time
Get a
that
babysitter and like get dressed and go outside and come back and you have to work next day. So like both of us are very stay-at-home people. Like we don't like.
we're also hardworking too, and that's not helpful.
Yeah,
sometimes.
so we like to be home, just relax and enjoy. Order food maybe, like have a drink or watch TV.
The first time that we actually did date night was here in LA last year in response to the turmoil that we were kind of going through. So we thought, well, we have to figure. Date night is a thing couples do. We should do it. And it kind of felt forced. It kind of felt like we weren't naturally doing it. And then we realized that, no, you can't. It's not a date. It's only awkward if you call it date night and then try to force yourself to do it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just you and your buddy going out and having a good time. And that's when we realized it's just best buddies, best friends having a good time.
I find it more fun when we are all of us, the 4 of us, doing something together. I feel like that's a beautiful memory. Not me going out for dinner and like thinking like, did the kids go to bed? Are they miss me? They're struggling with the babysitter or with grandma or something? So I'm not. I don't think they're in the age yet to allow us to do that.
I'm going to tell you something else too, because I just realized something. We didn't have the first time we said "I love you" as a moment in time in which, oh my God, he said it. We did have the first time I said, "Noureen, you're my best friend."
Oh.
And we both melted when we. I remember that. I remember the first time I said, "You're my best friend," and from that point on, that was a much. Would you say that was a meaningful one?
Yes.
You were
When I have to sit and think about it, like, yeah.
That's a
you're
big
my
deal.
best
You're my
friend.
best friend.
Yeah.
That was a big. I remember that one. I remember exactly everything about that one.
Did you text it or say it in person?
I think we were in bed. You were like, I don't. We were. The way I remember.
He had something that day, something about his job,
Mm-hmm.
and we are very much involved in each other's work, not in a bad way, just like telling each other what's happening, listening to each other. What do you think I should say? What do you think I should do? And that night, you were not having the best day of your school year, I guess.
Right.
And you were talking to me about something, and at the end of it, you said, you're my best friend, and you too.
The guy had a job that I didn't like, and I remember she heard this little story. At the end, I felt better, and I said, Noureen, you're my best friend. And I had my hand on her back when I said it, and I remember her back not melted, but got way less tense. And I remember thinking to myself, ooh, that hit a nerve. And then she said, you're my best friend, too. And she kind of got glassy-eyed when she said it, and then I got glassy-eyed when I realized how big it meant. That was the big one. Yeah, sorry, I didn't even change the subject, but you said they love you. That was much more meaningful for me.
I think that took the pressure off the idea that I have nobody here but my husband. Just the idea of he's just my husband. I have no my friends or none of my family here, but this is my family and he's my friend. So sometimes people would like me to answer different to that question. In Middle East or here. Don't you miss your family? Of course I miss my family. Of course I miss my mom, my brothers. But I'm not dying for it. I'm going to see them. I see them every day through like a FaceTime or something. But this is my family too. Yeah.
So how would you say that you have changed, evolved, grown from being together? How are you different people because of the relationship?
Patience.
I would say that you learn how to work for other people, work with other people.
Understanding that there's what I say and what I feel, what somebody else says, and so like when she says this, but I'm her husband, we live together. I know that's not what she's feeling right now. I hope that's coming across right. Like that when she'll say, that thing of like fine, and it's really not fine. That kind of thing. It's like when you see that all the time, like she'll say, "Oh, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine," and I know my wife. I know it's not fine. You carry that with you to your other relationships. That when you go to work and you're in a meeting and somebody says, "Oh yeah, that's a really good idea," but you can kind of get a sense that they don't really think it's a good idea. To trust that instinct, that no, that's when she does it, it's valid. So when he does it, it's valid. And then you got to stop and realize you're not the only person in this world. And, sorry, that's.
So you become more tuned in and perceptive.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And I think for me, it was more because of my childhood and the way I grew up. I always had this like, I have to do this for people because I have to. It was never coming from because I love to do this. I think I grew up so much on that.
With duty.
Like my duty is like because this is my family and I love them and I'm happy to do this for them. Different than, well, I have to cook and clean for my brothers because my parents are divorced, so poor me. So that's not even, that's not here anymore because I always tell myself, I choose this life.
Choice.
I chose this life.
When we first, choice. Like when we first got married, she would those duties that you kept talking, she would do it furiously. As if she's like my duty. I love my family, so I do these things. So she would do it with a passion and a
I took care of my 5 brothers when my parents were divorced, and I was 8 when I started taking care of them. I was young, so for me it was like doesn't have to be a continuous to the thing that I lived before. No, I'm gonna enjoy life here, enjoy being around my children. I'm not gonna repeat what my parents did. I'm gonna be I don't have to even think about the life before.
When she tells me to do the dishes, she loves me and trusts me enough to know I'm not gonna get ticked off. Like I'm not gonna drive my husband out into the arms of another woman because I asked him to clean the back. No, but that seems silly. It took years, I would say, for her to feel. I can't speak to her feelings, but to be saying like, "Annie, I'm not doing it." No, and when that happened, that was he really loves me enough to let me piss him off, and that helped, and that really, and after that point, she wasn't so like furiously cleaning. It wasn't like housework wasn't this proof of love anymore. Now it was just it was a chore that if she didn't want to do it, she didn't have to. It wouldn't be. She didn't have to base her self-worth on how well she kept her house.
But before, like in Middle East mentality, we have this like as much your house look clean, you're a good person, you're a good woman, let's say. Your cooking is like the display of your cooking is amazing. That's
19, yeah.
like you got 10 of 10, you know. It's
1950s housewife kind of.
exactly, but no one cares about how you feel. Are you sick? You're not feeling well, you're tired? Maybe you just want to lay down today. That I had to learn how to talk myself out of the way I used to think.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you have servants when you were taking care of your 4 brothers? You had to do all the cooking, and I mean, don't middle class families have servants?
We had, but because my father was a divorced man, we couldn't have a female staying with us. So she was coming twice a week. She was hired by my grandfather, coming twice a week, doing like the deep working. My father was, I would say, not there much. So it was kind of, I felt like it's my job as the only girl in the family. I have 3 younger brothers and 1 older than me, and I had to cook, I had to clean, I had to help them with their homework. Well, I didn't even know how to help my own self with the homework. I was so little, and I think it was like so much responsibility like thrown on me in a very young age.
And also dealing with stigma of divorce that she had to deal with too, you know.
Also, I was like very stubborn because I did this when I was little. I don't have to listen to someone telling me this. Or someone's pain doesn't count for me because I had it harsh when I was little. I had to grow up, learn, but that's someone's pain. That's maybe this sure is too much for this person because they're not used to it. But if it's okay for me, doesn't mean it's okay for everybody. Yeah.
1 second, we heard a cough, so just let me check. Mia, Miriam, you okay? They're fine.
Oh, good.
That was quick. Everything, you just got like, I heard a cough.
Yeah.
But I gotta tell you, that was a big one for me. Is as time went on, that household duties, as time went on, she wasn't as fired up about them, and when we had this, we
She
would
could
talk
relax.
about it. You started to realize that she I can't once again I can't speak, but it started to seem to me that she had wrapped up so much of her self-worth on how much she could perform her wifely duties, and when as we started talking more and more and more, just got better at being married. When we realized that she didn't need to do that anymore, it got so much better, and that she's calm. You can relax and just be taken care of, and you're not offending me to make me clean the bathroom. You know?
Do the girls want to say hi, or do you not want them on TV?
I prefer if not. Just
Okay.
I mean, they could say hi, but we're not at that point yet.
Okay.
What?
Do you want to put girls on?
To say hi.
Do you want to come say hi, girls?
Me now? Come here. Miriam
doesn't want.
Okay.
Mina, come here. You want to come say hi?
Can you come say hi to this nice lady?
Friend, come here.
Sure. That's Gail. Can you say hi, Gail?
Hi, Mina. You know, I grew up in LA. Do you like living in LA?
You can be honest.
Be honest.
No.
What don't you like about it? Don't you go to the beach and see the dolphins? I mean, there's a lot of really fabulous things to see in LA, no?
Well, I mean, there is, but we don't really go to the beach anymore because it's too cold.
And quarantine.
And quarantine.
Oh.
We've only been here for
And
2
they
years.
love
Like,
seasons. They love the snow
that was
too.
sorry.
And it's too hot here, and there's way too much noise.
Oh, the traffic noise, huh?
Mhm.
Mm. What do you like your school?
Yeah, it's too overprotective.
Why?
Because they won't really let us play tag.
But you mean when you went to school, but now you're doing virtual school, right?
Yeah.
Oh, but when you were in regular school, they wouldn't let you play tag?
Yeah.
They have
They-
really
because they
uber protective
Rule.
They
rules.
don't even
Kids
have.
to learn.
Before they had like a really nice playground with like a glass door and like swings and everything, but then they had to remove it because they didn't want any kids getting hurt.
Helicopter protective, yeah.
And they was more of outdoor.
It was an outdoor
like,
experiential learning
Yes.
kind of place.
Oh.
So
with our friends' school, so it's also all about like outdoor, go play, be a
Oh,
child.
Mina, last question.
Mhm.
I know this is a little bit early, but what kind of work do you think you might like to do when you're grown up?
She has so many.
I have a lot. I think I kind of want to be a cartoonist.
Or an animator, right?
Or animator or cartoonist. Or
What
an art.
But art, okay, got it. What are your favorite animations in video? Do you like anime or do you like, I don't know what you really like.
No, what do you like?
I don't really like anime. I like sometimes like 2D animations and 3D animations.
Mm-hmm.
Have you learned how to make them yourself?
Yeah, kind of.
She's getting there.
Yeah.
She's taught herself. You'd be amazed what you can do with some tutorials on YouTube. She taught. Imagine our surprise. All of a sudden we came out. She had animated like a 3D character, and we asked her how, and she's like, YouTube.
And she loved to draw, and she drew very, very, very beautifully.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you have anything you want to show us that you've drawn?
Yeah. Go get some.
Go see if you can find it.
How cool!
Mm-hmm.
She's perfect example of what you said, Andy, about this new generation.
No, but there's an interesting thing, and I hadn't thought about it until just now, of the notion of unless we're struggling, we don't know how to exist. You saw her. It's very telling that keeps coming back. Of what don't you like about your school? She's like, they're way too overprotective. And I'm like, yeah, because they don't want you to get hurt. She's like, Daddy, I don't care if I get hurt. Like, it's no fun not to get hurt. She said this, and I didn't until this very minute after we had this conversation. I never realized why that was always the first thing she would say about why don't you like your school. She's like, because they won't let us play they won't let us play tag. They won't let us, you know what I mean? They keep, you can't do that. No, you can't do that. And I never really realized it until this minute right now why that was.
It's perfect.
So we'll see if she brings something out here.
Where do you live in LA, may I ask?
Brentwood.
Hmm.
So you want to hear the logic? You lived in the area. Here was our dumb logic. We thought to ourselves, when we got here, we were like, okay, Beverly Hills is there, Brentwood's there. So here's what we'll do. We're gonna get a small 2-bedroom apartment, right? We'll get a small apartment. It's on Barrington, so it's noisy as hell. It's like being next to the 405. You know what I mean? It's loud. But you know, it's LA. You know what I mean? It's the good weather. You know, there's a lot of stuff to do. And I'm not making this up, Gail. These words actually came out of my mouth. I was like, yeah, it's 2 bedrooms, but you know, it's LA. It's not like they're gonna lock us in here for like 3 years or something like that. I'm not kidding. So then, and it happened, and so then we had to struggle a little bit with just kind of existing there. So then when you say the beach, remember, it's true. They used to live, they kind of came alive when we lived in Pennsylvania on a boarding school campus in the woods and in the trees, and they ran around in the fields. When they got here, they were really not impressed at all. And then, so we started to really, so that you can imagine how anxious that we got, because we were like, no, we got to prove why we did this. And so we started to find things. We got restaurants that we like. They got, they took swimming lessons at the YMCA in Santa Monica. We went to the beach every weekend, And then COVID came. You
can't go to the beach?
The parking lots were all closed. LA County is bad, man. They locked it down quick. And we don't trust anybody. That's another thing too. It spread so fast here. We don't trust anybody, and because we don't want to carry it on other people. So from their perspective, they were yanked out of the world that really, for Miriam, the only world she had ever known, and jammed them in a 2-room apartment. Even the dog was pissed off at us for weeks. Like, she wouldn't look at us for weeks, and we were trying to say, no, it's better, it's honey, no, it's going to be awesome. And they really didn't get it. And when COVID came, as of like right now, they've existed in this country, now maybe a little less. But they're quickly approaching, they've been in quarantine longer than they've actually lived in LA and without it. And so that's really problematic for them. And that's really difficult for them. And luckily, but here's the thing, they got a mommy and daddy who've got some grit and have done their best to try to instill that grit in them. So I'm very happy. They're tough kids, man. Sorry, they're tough. They're dealing with it. They're still not impressed, and I don't think they will ever forgive us for moving them out here, because they were in like little kid heaven out there. We lived there. It was a boarding school in the woods. There were fields. There was deer running through all the places. Like, when Daddy went to work, he worked at the building across literally 20 feet
like 3
away
playgrounds
from
on
our front
campus,
door.
Friends play dates. So the moment I realized they really don't like it when Mina said, "Oh, well, I have something to show you," and she made a PowerPoint presentation for where she want to live and reasons why she didn't want to live in LA, and she was like. Pollution and noise level and stuff like she listed all like in Wisconsin is this, it's in Chicago is this, and in LA is this, and this is places that I would love to know to go. Even the prices of houses. She
We
took pictures
hinted that we might leave.
Yeah.
We hinted that we might leave. And she came back at us with a PowerPoint, a well-formed, categorized, like pro and con PowerPoint that she put up.
Yes.
With Daddy, these are the types of houses that are there, and this is the type of house that I want. And of course, it's a mansion with like 1,000 rooms, but it didn't change that at that point.
She understood the price
But
range.
she understood the price range too. She's like, Daddy, this house is this, and at that point is when we realized it's not our decisions anymore. At a certain point, we do everything for our kids anyway. But that's when we realized that they had well thought out the level to which they really did not like it here. And it'll always be home, and they have friends. And she didn't say it, but Serena, her best friend here, as she said, is the best friend of her life, right? She's like the friend. She has her best friend here, and they're best buddies. And
but she loves my family too. She want to be close to his side.
Right.
She loved my side too, but she more used to his side. She loved them, and she want to be close to them too.
And to be clear, also, there's another piece of this too. Is one of the reasons that we decided to leave the boarding school in rural white Pennsylvania, suburban, very affluent area of Pennsylvania, was that we were surrounded by people that, and I didn't realize until we got here, and my children started bringing home all of these brown-skinned children as friends, and we realized very quickly that as much as a white male, even though the shade of my daughter's skin is a little darker than mine, that doesn't change the fact of how they see themselves. Mm-hmm. And what came out continuously was that Daddy, we never felt like we looked like all the other people in our class. Mm-hmm. And so they're happier, because they don't look like us, Daddy. They look like you, but they don't look like us.
Like the moms are different, coming picking up their kids from the school in Pennsylvania. Mommy is different. Mommy skin color is different. Mommy have an accent, and they know.
Oh, when they thought Noureen was the maid once, that pissed her off.
Yes.
That made her really mad.
Oh, the nanny.
They thought she was the
nanny. They thought I'm the Hispanic nanny, literally the Mexican nanny for the kids because they're both white and I'm not. And
they asked if she spoke Spanish.
Really mad. It was a dance school in Pennsylvania, and Mina didn't want to go back again. She was so mad. I said, it's okay. It was hard to explain to her that some people think this way only because you're different than them.
That pissed her off. I remember she was mad. She was really mad.
Yeah,
she didn't understand why they would think such a thing.
Yeah.
Good. She should be mad.
Yeah.
So, last question. What kind of advice would you give to a young couple starting out? Like let's say to your girls when they're getting ready, if they choose to get married. What would you say to them based on your experience? Make sure you do and don't do. Besides, don't go to bed mad.
Like an international couple, like cross culture, or just any couple?
Any.
Do your thing. I would say always do your thing. Like, don't put yourself behind the person. I think my biggest moment was I'm going to continue working in hotels. I think that was the happiest moment of realization of my life is going to be. I don't have to cancel my life to be with this person. Continue to be yourself. Do what you're good at or like.
That was a big moment in our courtship too. Was when she came to me and she's like, Andy, when the children are born, can I still work? And typical, like not typical, but like the Arab man, like, no, my darling, never, I would never let you soil your hands with work.
No, because I used to get this arranged marriage, and people come to see me to like display.
Check you out.
Beautiful, this thing, this that. So here's what I'm looking for. I don't want you to work. I want you to stay home. So for me, I was like, no. So I would always make sure the person I wanted to be with understand that I'm going to continue my life as a working person.
She passed up on a whole lot of financial stability to be with this idiot. You know what I'm saying? Like, so the question you got is, like, hey, when the children come, can I still work? And I, like, this idiot, you know what I mean? Like,
please do.
Honey, I don't know if you know what I do for a living, but we're gonna kind of need you to work there. Like, so yeah. And I could, and she was so happy, and I couldn't understand. And so I felt like an idiot that I just, well, I guess I'm a really awesome guy. When in actuality, was she can be herself, that she doesn't have to change who she is. For me, that was.
I think also very important that both of them have to compromise, not one person. So if I am going to be, I think if I'm forced to be like, well, we're gonna live in America, there's no option that we're gonna move somewhere, that's gonna be hard. I'm gonna feel all the time, well, I lost something, you didn't, you're home, you're around your family. But thankfully, we never had to do that because I made it clear I'm not gonna be a victim. And like, yeah, we both have to do things. Like, you lived in Jordan for 5 years, we live in here. God knows where next we're gonna be. And I love that idea of we don't know where we're gonna go.
Andrew,
like it, yeah.
For me, there's a couple. Telling somebody how you feel in a relationship, telling them how you feel is never the wrong thing, ever.
In a
like
way.
ever.
Not
Even in a fight though, like if it's something that's really making us angry and it comes out angry, but at least, like, if I see her, she raises her voice at me, at least I can see that it's really making her angry. Like, the fight is how do you explain it? The argument is the problem resolving itself just as much as it is an indication that there is a problem. You know what I mean?
By putting it out there.
You got to remember that the argument, it's the solution looks a lot like the problem too sometimes, you know, and remembering that, and that no one ever telling someone how you feel is going to make it way less likely that that there's going to be a problem. And then the other one I was thinking about, because your email alluded to gender roles, that the roles, you get to define them. And I think that was when we got over the whole, because remember, she was trying to guess what she thought an American wife was supposed to be. I was trying to guess what an Arab husband was supposed to be.
Yeah.
And in actuality, it got good when we realized that we get to define our own role. Like, our roles it's a constitution. You know, I mean, the best thing I don't know, a team. Like, I've said that too. We say that all the time too, that at the end of the day, if we could, the romance could dry up tomorrow, we'd stay together simply because
and it's not about
we're a
who
really
does
good team.
more or who does less, or no, it's not. If I'm a person like things to be done right away, and I have an idea, I want it to be done right away. And it took me a while to understand that doesn't mean you have to do it right away because I had this idea. I decided to do it now. Mm-hmm. He doesn't have to get up and go do it. I can do it if I want to. Like, it doesn't have to become a challenge. I said I want to do this, then you have to go to the grocery store to do this. And I also, the best thing we did, we never copied other couples.
Yeah.
Like, we have families who is the perfect picture of good-looking, skinny, perfect children, picture every Christmas and every fall, that type of thing. We didn't feel we have to do that. Yeah, we
kept getting the Christmas cards, and then a year later, the same couple that was happy in the Christmas card was divorced. And then you realize that they're fronting. I mean, they're trying to express, look how happy we are.
Yes.
And then it dawned on us that we've never done that in our entire lives. And then that was what made it so much better. Is that, you know, like, it's not that.
I would text you a Merry Christmas, but I don't have to. Maybe it is beautiful. I love seeing people go and take pictures as a family, memories and stuff. But for us, we have our own way of doing things, and I didn't feel like we understood we didn't have to change it to please other people or to fit more than other people things, especially being from different culture background.
The other one is I'll leave this one. Ready? We didn't know we were an interracial couple until like 3 years in, when my mom referred to us as an interracial couple.
Yeah.
And so we were really confused by it. And she's like, interracial couple. And I was like,
what do you mean?
What the hell are you talking about? And you realize that, like,
yeah, this is how they look at you.
That's how they see you. But see, the thing about it is that I've never I see her. She sees me. I just see the person I love.
Yes.
She just sees the person she loves. The one thing that is always, in terms of other couples, the one there is one. The interracial couples, I would say there is a fraternity and a brotherhood of interracial couples have a much deeper understanding. It just seems to me sometimes of not always, but sometimes with relationships because of that, because they see the person they love, and everyone else just sees this interracial couple. And when you see the disconnect and realize, oh no, you don't see what I see, then you don't have to base what's here doesn't need to be determined by what's out there.
Yeah.
What's here is determined by us. People look at us as an interracial couple. I've never thought of us as that ever. I've just thought of us as a couple that loves each other.
Like, I look at him as like Andy, my husband, my friend. I never look at him because I hear this comment all the time. Are you married to a white man? Like, yeah, I guess.
Sure.
I never looked at him.
I've never, yeah.
He traveled. He lived in Jordan, in Nazareth, in Kenya too. So I didn't have to feel that way in my own house. But outside for sure.
I gotta tell you, this is better than marriage counseling. I gotta tell you,
I know.
This is very therapeutic. This is very. We should have done this a while ago. We should have just done this, you know.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, we'll call it back next week with the next.
Good.
Pop.
I love it. Oh, wow. I'm going to